Hello, my name is Paul Anzalotti. I am the founder of the Amerasia Consulting Group. Been doing admissions consulting for the past 13 years. Today's presentation, we're going to get into how to get into Wharton. I'm going to take a little less of a philosophical approach today and be a bit more pragmatic because I believe that helps anyone that's viewing this presentation right now actually know what they're getting into when they're applying to Wharton. So I'm not going to cover a lot of um, background or other research that you could conduct online on your own about the percentage of men versus women, or do they want consultants or people coming out of finance. What I am going to do is dive deep into the essay prompts because, again, I believe that is the way you will understand what you're getting into, whether or not you actually want to apply to the school, whether or not you actually have what it takes to write and hit all aspects of the essay prompt without leaving gaps or without coming up short. Um, and so that's the pragmatic way. So here we go. All right, just jumping right into it. The first question that Wharton asks and has always asked for the last, I mean, my God, 10 years at least, right, is a goals essay. Make no mistake, this is a goals essay, right? And goals essays are always very straightforward. Um, it depends on the school as to whether or not you're dialing up the longer term goal or you're emphasizing the short term goal. But at Wharton, they are very pragmatic. They're very similar to Booth and Columbia in that way. They're different from Stanford and Harvard in that way, which like more of the how are you going to change the world type goal, right? Wharton does want a bit of that. So right? You always have to reach for the stars a little bit with their long-term goal. But Wharton is very, very keen to know how is the applicant or candidate or whoever we're reading about, what is the game plan to get to get a job upon graduation? Just keep that in mind, especially for the international students who may be here watching. They You just know that with a lot of these shenanigans going around um, with visas and immigration, right? Um, be very, very pragmatic in your short-term goal. And in fact, I would tell you, I'll tell you in a couple slides, to play your cards closer to your chest a bit. But anyway, here, what do you hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA? 500 words. Um, Start off by answering the freaking question, right? And when they say, what do you hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA, they say, what do you hope to gain personally and professionally? But people were waxing a bit too philosophical here. So they just kept it to gain professionally here, I think, in the last 2 years. And let's just think about this. Let's be pragmatic without even putting pen to paper. What do I want to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA? I want to gain the skills, the management skills, the leadership knowledge or acumen that I require to reach my short and long-term goals. That's basically it. And I'm always, me personally, Paul, I'm always a huge fan of efficient, effective writing. Don't, people that will say, well, don't I need a hook? You don't need any dark and stormy nights, right? You don't need the sea was angry, my friend, that day, or whatever. There she blows, right? What you need is the biggest hook of all. And this may sound like a spoiler, but the biggest hook of all is to always be freaking clear in what it is you're saying, lest you come off as a bullshitter, or what they say in writing as a disingenuous narrator, right? Full of it, in other words. So you see here, under number one, clear thesis statement wedded directly to the essay prompt, right? This is literally your first paragraph, right? And that's it. Tell them what they want to know at a really high level. Then you take a step back and you start telling them about your long-term goals. Now, don't dump everything. One more point about point number one here. Do not dump everything into the first paragraph. It's the kitchen sink approach. It's stuffing 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound bag. You don't need to do that, right? Don't overwhelm the reader. They will mark you as a poor communicator. You could, as they say, crap rose petals, right? But if you cannot communicate that to the admissions committee in an effective and clear way, you're screwed, right? So don't let the messenger get shot, right? Don't let the message get muddled by overwhelming nonsense language, right? Okay, so The long-term goals is what logically follows from above. And as a warning, before we get into the next slide, before you get into your long-term goals, resist the urge to start talking about your background here in the beginning, whether it's paragraph 1 or paragraph 2. They don't need to know that. This essay, fair warning, is all about you looking towards the future and describing what it is you want to do from here to eternity, and not a recap of what you've done. That's why they asked for the resume, right? So just keep that in mind, because the biggest mistake I see early on in this goals essay, especially at Wharton, is telling the admissions committee all about your background as if they have short-term memory loss, and as if they've never seen a consultant or somebody from banking before. Doesn't work that way. Moving on. Okay, so the long-term goal is what logically follows from the thesis. Okay, the first paragraph. Make this the second paragraph. So in the long term, and I just throw an example out here to talk about. So it's as straightforward as this. In the first paragraph here, it says in the long term, you're going to lay out exactly what it is you want to do. Now, this is something that I wrote up as an example. So ignore some of the run-on sentence aspects of this, but what you see here in the first paragraph: in the long term, my goal is to lead a specialized growth equity firm that pioneers new approaches to identifying, investing, and scaling technology businesses while building yada, 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 right? So here, lay out what it is you're going to do, what your firm's going to do, what you're going to do, right? They're going to be a leader, whatever that is, a partner, a director in leading a specialized growth equity firm. So anyway, the one thing, so there it is. You lay it out very clear, right? Now, only after you tell them what your goal is, I swear to you, this is true. Only after you tell them, Wharton, what the long-term goal is, then can you get into why you want to do it. And don't go crazy here with why you want to do it, right? Just give them 1-2 sentences about why it's important to you. This is not Stanford. This is not Harvard. This is Wharton. This is a presentation about Wharton, right? Always focus on the pragmatic aspects of Wharton. And they are pragmatic, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, with respect to your goals. So don't rob Paul to pay Peter. In other words, the more you put in this paragraph here, I firmly believe that a key differentiator in your personal philosophy, the more you put there for Wharton, the more you run the risk of sounding like a bullshitter, right? But more importantly, you only have 500 words for Wharton. This isn't Harvard or some other school with unlimited word count. And the more you put here about your personal background for Wharton, they don't care that much, not as much as Harvard or Stanford, which you're probably going to apply to as well. But you are robbing yourself. You're neutering your ability to tell the admissions committee about other relevant things that they want to know about. So what do you hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA? Remember, we said management skills, leadership knowledge, expertise. Okay. So inevitably, you must state your goals here, right? Hopefully that's clear at this point. But also, you have to talk about all those little nuanced things that are Wharton specific later in the essay. And that's when we're really going to get into what's up with Wharton. Okay. All right. Moving on. Again, I already started giving you some of my public service announcement, right? You can reach for the stars a little bit with Wharton. You can tell them, I want to bring running water to every village in Canada or wherever. No offense to the Canadians. But you can go a bit exotic on the long-term goal, but really don't invert the short and long-term goals. So your short-term goal is, just think about it from the recruiter's perspective. The Wharton Admissions Committee is going to think about your short-term goals, which we're about to step into on the next slide. Step into that dog pile in a second, so hang on. But your short-term goals and long-term goals, I often see that people will invert them. They'll start off with all this like Joe Exotic stuff when they're trying to describe a short-term goal. And Wharton, I'm talking about Wharton, the admissions committee, they think like recruiters. They put their little recruiter hat on, and they'll sit there and they'll say, okay, can whoever's applying, right? Rajiv, Randy, whoever, are they able to get this job immediately upon graduation? And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you are an international student, I suspect many of you on this presentation may be, you don't tell them that you want to be a little agnostic, like location agnostic, right? So in other words, you don't have to say, I'm going to work in Philadelphia or I'm even going to work in the United States. A safe play, especially in these tumultuous times, right, is to say, and this is for Wharton, got to give them an insurance policy because remember, they have their recruiter's hat on when they're looking at the short-term goals, is that you would return to your current company, maybe that's Bain India, McKinsey, wherever, and you could accept that open offer. So, and maybe that's a backup plan. So you could have a short-term goal saying upon graduation, I want to go work for Dahlberg, Bridgespan, whatever, Sequoia. I want to go work is for some technology company. As a backup plan, I could accept the open offer I have to return to Bain India, where I would pursue a path that eventually leads to my long-term goals. So that backup goal as an insurance policy, and if you're an American applicant to a business school to Wharton, right? You could also give them that as well. Remember, the I would argue that one of the most important things, if not the most important thing here, is to tell them about your short-term goal. They're less concerned about the philosophical, I want to save all the whales aspect of your long-term goal. And this is all Wharton specific. Okay, let's move on. Well, what do we have here? Next is your short-term goal. Um, to me, it makes sense to put it after your long-term goal. Some people want to mix it up, short-term goal and long-term goal, right? To me, look, think of this essay. Like if you're the Wharton admissions committee, think of the way they think, right? They're looking at this like a funnel. The big top, not inverted funnel, just a funnel. And so it looks like an inverted pyramid, right? But at the very top, where you're filling in all of the aspects of who you are, you're answering the question, you're giving them the long-term vision, right? For Wharton. Then drilling down and getting a little narrower to the narrower part of the funnel, that's the short term. You're getting more granular. And then you're going to get into other aspects where you're describing why you need an MBA and why Wharton, right? Very, very, very granular, specific things. But here, you could put the short-term goal first. I don't recommend it with respect to efficiency and clarity, right? Always tell them where you're going and then take a step back and tell Wharton, the admissions committee, what it is or how you plan to get there, right? Okay, so what I gave an example here. Upon completing my MBA, my immediate goal is to join the operating group of a tech-focused growth, equity, or venture capital firm. This role would provide me direct exposure to blah, 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 right? Okay. See that? 2 sentences. Boom. Right? You don't have to educate them on the state of your industry or your state of goals. If you find yourself putting down, and this is for Wharton, for their admissions committee, if you find yourself putting down a goal that is so exotic that no one from Wharton has ever taken up that role upon graduation, go look on LinkedIn. You see anybody with Wharton MBA that has that type of thing? Then bad news. Go to their Career Center report. Okay, this is all part of how to get into Wharton. Go to their Career Center report at Wharton. Look at the internship. It's a PDF. You can download it, open it up. You'll see who's getting the internships, and you'll see what industries, regions, locations the graduates went into. You'll see the top hiring employers. That is probably, but right now, besides opening up a dummy Wharton application, you can even open up a real one for round 3, right? As long as you don't hit submit, they're not going to see it. They're not going to blacklist you in case you have that idea going on in your head. Use your real information. It's totally fine. It probably will transfer to this year's application if you don't hit submit for round 3. Go in there, review all the questions, okay? And you'll see that basically they are really pragmatic in some of the questions that they're asking you, right? But when you go through that online application, the other next most important thing that you want to do is go through the Career Center report. You want to go through LinkedIn. You want to see who graduated from Wharton. You want to see what they're doing now. And don't be a trailblazer, right? You want to, listen, never be on the bleeding edge when it comes to a short-term goal. That is not being pragmatic enough for the Wharton Admissions Committee. Now, going back, at TAT, a company I made up, right? I have gained a great appreciation for our unique opportunities, methodologies, and identifying sourcing deal opportunities, yada, 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 right? And this has all honed my negotiation strategy and finance skills. So why is this paragraph in here? You don't really have to write this second paragraph, but I put it in here for a reason. What if you are working for a bank and you want to transition into product management. And remember, career switchers at Wharton are not really rewarded, right? Again, put on the Wharton recruiter hat. So if you want to switch careers, if you're a consultant and you've worked in technology and then you want to go work for, get some product management skills and maybe go to whatever, Google, Amazon, whoever it may be, that is about as far as you can push it, right? Even then, it might be a little bit of a stretch. But here, you can see here, I'm trying to um, set up the next paragraph, but I'm trying to also, or this applicant is also trying to put forth that they have a lot of the skills that they need already to realize their goal, right? To realize what it is that they want to do. So anyway, that's why this paragraph's here. We can come back to this if anybody has questions. All right. So now what you're going to do is start transitioning into YMBA, which you saw a little bit of on the prior page. So here, what I would say is, fair warning, do not go into all the details of your current work experience. I know I warned everybody about that later, but if it doesn't occur earlier on in the presentation, if it doesn't occur earlier on in the present, or not in the present, in the essay number one, people or applicants here tend to start to want to add in everything that they do here. And you get this big blob of crap in the middle of the essay where it just goes completely off track, right? So instead of talking about what it is you do now, which is already on the resume, and trust me, this isn't the Wharton Admissions Committee's first rodeo. They know what it is that you do at work, even if it's some startup, even if it's a family company. Just don't get into that. It's not the purpose of this, right? Okay, so in this paragraph, which is probably the shortest paragraph besides the introductory paragraph or the thesis sentence, the very first, one sentence that you answer the question, or two sentences, really what you're doing is you're telling them here about what it is that you need to learn. And that's the only reason you would ever talk about what it is that you do, right? You would okay, so let me give you an example here in the next slide. So my experience is sourcing, evaluating, executing deals has given me an understanding of what attributes make a good investment. That is all this gentle person applying said about their past experience, because for God's sake, the admissions committee knows what an investor working for a PE or VC fund does. Okay. Your fund, however famous it is not that different from the other one, at least not for the audience, which is who? The Wharton Admissions Committee. Okay. However, so this is just a setup to right here. However, there are still several functional areas in which I need greater expertise. Oh, geez, what is that? And that's coming, and I've underlined it here. Only then will I be able to understand how great companies become industry leaders so that I can replicate those results in the future. Okay, to become a more well-rounded investor and business operator, I must further develop my skills in Area 1, technology development, Area 2, operations, and Area 3, management. I always advocate putting out 3 to 4 areas because it forces you, as the applicant applying to Wharton, to, I guess, vet critically what it is you actually need to learn. Don't take it for granted. See, Wharton Pragmatic Admissions Committee, they want to know, has this gal or guy actually analyzed what it is he needs to learn? And can our curriculum help him or her? So you'll see, why isn't this gentle person who works in finance saying that they want to engage the finance curriculum at Wharton, right? And again, this is Wharton specific because this is a how to apply to Wharton presentation. But at Wharton, for those who didn't know, newsflash, you must declare a major. So it's not just MBA, it's like major management, there's financial, blah, 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 there's this, marketing, whatever. So you must declare that on the application form. Again, another reason why for Wharton, especially for Wharton, but it's a good practice for every other business school, get in there and open up a dummy application, even if it's round 3, and see what the questions are. They'll see you have to click one, and then you'll know, for God's sake, oh, I must really pay attention to what it is are in these actual curriculums. I can't take this kind of, one size fits all approach. So here with Wharton, to become, there's these 3 areas. Now, these 3 areas, so when I was working with this dummy applicant, let's say, uh, you know, if they're in finance, I say, okay, listen, you don't need more finance skills. I mean, sure, you'll take some finance classes at Wharton, but you're already operating 9 out of 10. Okay, Wharton will bring you to a 10 out of 10, and you're super terrific, fun, awesome finance modeling or whatever other investment management skills, right? Um, but here, if you're saying you want to build a great long-term company, you want to get a job doing whatever in the short term, where are the gaps? If you had to look at a job description online for your role upon graduation, it's another thing I encourage everybody to do for Wharton, because they are putting their little recruiter cap on, is to go look at post-MBA job advertisements or adverts or listings for, if you want to go to Sequoia, you want to go to Lightspeed, you want to go to Google or Amazon or wherever, um, go look and see if they have a post-MBA program, who they're looking for. And you can see, okay, I fulfill 3 out of 6 of their requirements, or 5 out of 10, whatever it is, 1 out of 10. If it's 1 out of 10, my friends, that's a long road to haul, right? So, but if it's, hopefully you'll have at least half of them, because you need some transferable skills, right, to get that job. That's why career switchers are not rewarded at Wharton or when writing goals essays. So here, what you're trying to say is that without saying it to Wharton, in your head, okay, I looked at the job description. I see I have half of them. The areas that I'm a little deficient in, okay, this job listing reaffirmed. I lack a lot of skills in the management or development of technology. I've never developed really a product before. I've helped other people. Maybe I've invested in a few, uh, technology product centric organizations, but I've never really gone through that whole process, soup to nuts, at least not in the academic sense. So let me look at technology development is one of the things I need to learn. Operations, sure, I've been out to a few companies. Sure, I've worked in operations maybe for a few weeks, and I helped these guys starting up a small company, mentoring them. But maybe they did some things wrong, whatever. So operations and management, these 3 areas contain all the classes, by the way. So when you name these 3 or 4 areas off, at least 2 general areas off for Wharton, the one thing you have to make sure is that the classes that you need to take to develop these 3 areas are within a certain part of the Wharton curriculum. So this requires you to know about the Wharton curriculum. And there is a document. It's called, if you email me at the email address at the bottom of this presentation, I can point you to it. It's online. But there is a wonderful document that Wharton has. It escapes my recollection right now what the name is, but they put it out every year, every couple years. It lists all the classes, it lists a description, it lists everything about the curriculum. That is probably the one document. I could have just cut and pasted that document as presentation, and you would have known everything about Wharton, and I would have looked like the expert, right? But seriously, you go through and you look at that, and you'll see what's under every part of the curriculum. So here, that's where these 3 areas, technology development, ops, and management, fall, of course, under the management curriculum. But whatever it is you identify as those gaps, you go look at that PDF, go look on the Wharton website, sure, know where those classes are generally taught, and boom, goes the dynamite. That is the management, or that is the major you want to pick. And they're going to make you stick with that too. Listen, you can always change perhaps once you get there, but when you're going in, that's where they're gonna try to slate you. So keep that in mind. Wharton is pretty much the only school that does this, by the way, where they make you declare a major before getting there. So do your research, folks. All right, next. So here, again, we just had our Joe applicant state the 3 areas that they need to, I guess, address or learn, right? So here, you so think is, man, remember the funnel? So we started with the high level for Wharton. We keep drilling down into the short-term goals, and we have that important but very, very slim and short and succinct transition paragraph where we're talking about, granted, what I know based on my background, what I do at work. This is the areas I need to cover. Now, what do you think comes next? What comes next is very Wharton-specific information, which is the classes. So if you name off 3 or 4 areas, what you really want to do here is you want to name off 3 or 4 classes that align with those general areas. You don't have to list off tons of classes. Don't make the mistake at Wharton of naming off the most famous classes your buddies told you about or that you read on Quora, right? Because those classes, Stanford, for example, has interpersonal dynamics, right? Or so Wharton has some GMC classes or whatever, some real estate finance class taught by some famous super duper professor uh, who came out of semi-retirement. There is that's great, right? But that doesn't tell Wharton as an admissions committee, jack shite about their school. It tells them that you can read Quora and that's it, or you listen to your buddy who may have gone there, gone to Wharton previously. It's not effective. So whatever it is you name in the prior slide, remember these three areas that are underlined: tech development, ops management, whatever it is here in this next paragraph, you have to address that here by researching and writing into this paragraph those Wharton classes, right? So granted, these are abbreviated examples I've written up here, but what I'm telling you, so um, you go here and you say, to someday run my own investment management firm, right? Well, there's an example I probably should have put in here, to be honest with you. So let's go back here, right? So right here, after this transition to YMBA paragraph, you would say, Wharton, this is what I hope to gain through the Wharton MBA and its comprehensive management curriculum. This is where you would continue on and you would say, for example, at Wharton, through its technology development, 707 class, its strategic operations across the universe, 808 class, and its cross-border global management, yada yada, 909. This is how I'm going to develop it. You can just list them off, and you may think, hey, Paul, isn't Wharton going to think I'm just laundry listing this stuff, just checking the boxes? I'm going to say, no, man. Or, well, man, they're not. You want to know why? Because you were very specific in your analysis or in your conclusion that you need these three areas. So in the next paragraph, when you say or in the next part of the essay, when you say I'm going to need A, B, and C, these specific classes, you're not being generic, right? If you just walk into it and view that one paragraph, Wharton admissions committee was only going to read that one paragraph about here are the classes I'm going to take. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, but it's totally out of context, right? So the more setup you do here, and I'm not talking about writing a lot in this transition paragraph, the less, the more relevant the next section will be about goals and classes and things that you want to take. Okay, so after you state the classes you require, then you're going to talk about the more leadership aspects of the program and your development at Wharton. This is a very important part to the Wharton experience, right? And I'll give you a few examples. So remember in the beginning of this presentation, the beginning of your essay, you said, Wharton, what do I hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA? I hope to gain the management and leadership skills I require to reach my short and long-term goals and make a difference in the world, right? That was your general thesis of this essay. Now, here, when you get down, when you talk about the classes, you're addressing very pragmatically the management aspects. And sure, there's some leadership knowledge classes that you'll take, totally okay, right? But then there's a separate paragraph after the prior one where you state the classes and things like that, or a separate section, right? In this essay for Wharton, where you're going to talk about the personal leadership. So you covered what you need to learn. Think of the prior paragraph about with the classes that I didn't put in here that maybe I'm thinking I should have at this point. But think of the prior paragraph where you're addressing the classes that you want to take at the global modular courses, right? Which is like these 2 to 3 day classes where you jet off across the world, right? There's all sorts of global leadership initiatives, whatever. All the classes. Think of the prior paragraph as these are the classes that I'm stating where I'm going to sit my butt in a seat. I'm going to sit my butt in a seat with 80 other kids in class, and we're going to watch the professor do his or her thing, right? Then what you can talk about is some GMC or global modular course. Even though there's a GMC. There's I'm drawing a blank here, but there are other global learning initiatives like field trips. So what you're going to say is, here are my weak spots, 1, 2, 3. Here are the classes that are going to address those weak spots, 1, 2, 3. They should align. Don't go with the famous professors or classes. Go with the classes that are relevant because you read about the Wharton curriculum in its entirety. And then right after that, talk about applying what you've learned in class through a more pragmatic class, right? So when I say state the classes you require, these courses must relate to the areas. What I'm talking about is state the in-class learning where your butt is in a seat, and then say, and Wharton also offers me a chance to test what I've learned when my butt is in the seat in West Philly in a very pragmatic and immediate way, which is like another global modular course, another field trip for a week to some part of the world that you've never been to before to test what it is that you've learned, right? So remember, we talk about the classes, talk about all the in the seat, your butt in the seat type classes, and then give them some more of the global modular aspects of the curriculum, all those experiential, um, um, cross-border experiences where you can apply stuff because you're there and you can see it. Okay, now, um, the next thing you want to do is take it up a level, right? Or drill further down in the curriculum, let's say, if we're using the funnel analogy, and talk about the leadership aspects of the program and how it will help you develop. So basically, Wharton has, they have preterm, which is a kind of an initial foray into how teams are formed and how people work with each other to, storm and norm and form and there are leadership aspects of it and a retreat and all this stuff, right? But so you can mention that, but really here, the number one thing that Wharton always pushes is this 360-degree style of leadership feedback where you'll be able to assess your strengths and weaknesses as a leader and improve your interpersonal skills, right? And this 360-degree leadership feedback initiative, it's like an umbrella term more or less, and it has all these different things underneath it, all led by this thing called the McNulty Center for Leadership. And there are classes, professors, it's this whole center, it's this whole program. Leading Effective Teams course would probably fall within their purview. Preterm does. There's all these like leadership hikes, leadership ventures is what they're called. It's even before you get to Wharton, you can probably spend $10,000 and go hiking through the Himalayas or the Andes or whatever. So there's all these kind of pragmatic hands-on things, and those things can be talked about here. So you may say, Paul, didn't you just say that a bunch of the hands-on leadership aspects should be addressed in like a prior paragraph when I'm talking about applying my knowledge, and why am I doing it here? Okay, listen, think of the paragraph where you're talking about classes as in the classroom, I'll learn this. Outside of the classroom, I'll apply this through another class where I get credit, more or less, right? It's still an academic, very academic experience. This thing here, when the next paragraph, when you start talking about leadership and improving your interpersonal skills, sure, you can talk about leading effective teams course, right? You can talk about preterm. You can talk about things you do get credit for, but there are also mentorship programs, fellowship programs that you can get involved with that you won't necessarily get credit for, some type of executives in residence mentorship program. You can even talk about clubs where you'll have to work with alumni and have responsibility for managing or leading a conference, and all these things will test not only your knowledge that you gain in the classroom, but more specifically develop your leadership, your ability. Remember, 360-degree leadership assessment, which Wharton, just Google it and Wharton, and you'll see that they are trying to get you to see yourself. Yeah, you. Wharton wants you to see you from like 1,000 different perspectives, so you know what you suck at and you stop lying to yourself and you work on that, right? So you're freaking honest with yourself, and then you can start working on your weaknesses. That's how Wharton admissions committee thinks. So anyway, okay, so let's move to the next one. Okay, so this is people always say, Paul, where do I put in? I met with the, Rajiv Smith and whatever, Rashika Smith, and I want to put that in there. Is it okay to name drop? I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, shows that you made a genuine effort. Okay, and then there's be like 20 names. You don't need 20 names. Remember, you never need, when you're writing these essays, especially for Wharton, they value efficiency and effective communication. Don't list off everybody that you know. Maybe you can save that for the application. Again, another reason to look at the Wharton application early to see if they have you list, if there's space for you to list anybody and everything from Wharton that you may have met. But here is where you talk about an old mentor or a class visit or whatever. If you don't visit because I heard there's some type of pandemic, I don't know. I haven't left my house lately for some reason, but you go through here and you just say, like, listen, if you have a mentor, somebody that you know that went to Wharton or not, just say, listen, I've spoken with alumni, I've spoken with current students. Their personal perspective made it all come real to me. Or I've worked with people from Wharton, and their approach to managing, to mentoring me, to professional development, to whatever, shepherding, coaching me, it showed me the value or the type of people, the value of the Wharton MBA, but more so the type of people that Wharton graduate, and how they think about relations, how they think about leading, how they think about developing, how they think about lifelong learning. Another key aspect of the Wharton curriculum, lifelong learning. And so I know that, I've already been affected by Wharton, and that's why I want to go here, and that's how I know I'll always be affected and influenced by Wharton, right? So you can see here in this um, conclusion, right? And I cut the bottom half off, whatever, because there's not that much more here. When I visited campus in December, I saw firsthand the interaction between professor and students, and I heard, I saw how they were challenging each other, but also, very positive and encouraging about controversial or different points of view and challenging, whatever, right? The one thing you need to know is that um, here, when you're narrowing that, don't start launching into um, don't start launching into a nice summary, fluffy paragraph. If you don't have anything to say, put the pen down and stop writing, right? So here, all you're trying to say is end it with a nice little bow tie on a slightly higher level, I suppose. But what you're trying to do here is you're trying to basically say, um, I came, I saw, I conquered a little bit. I've meaningfully engaged your school. And this is really, really important for Wharton to know, because they will know most likely that you're probably also applying to, at Harvard and Stanford. So they are the little redheaded stepchild. No offense to little redheaded stepchilds, but they want to know, listen, are you in love with our school, or are you in like with our school? Right. And every time you apply to a school, especially Wharton, who may have a little chip on the shoulder because they're not Harvard and they're not Stanford, no disrespect towards Harvard at all, and I actually mean that. Um, you have to convince them that you're not in like with them, you're in love with them. This is the only place you've ever wanted to go. Part of that is knowing a lot about the curriculum. Part of that is following Paul's process here for writing the most efficient, impactful essay possible. But here is where you can drive the point home in the last paragraph about who who you've spoken to, how you've interacted with the campus. Because why else? Somebody who interacts with quite a few people, who shows up, who goes to all the events and all this stuff, right? That person, yes, they want to go. But when you start talking to alumni and current students, and you mention them by name, and again, you don't have to mention 20 people, that is when you drive the point home that you're serious about going to Wharton. The other thing, too, is that the reason you don't want to mention all people that you've talked to, maybe you can put it on the online application, is because there has to be a point here at the end. The point is not just to list people and saying, okay, look, I want to go. The point is to say, I've talked, or I've spoken, or I've interacted with all these people, and it all summed up to this point. I could all see how what they learned or how Wharton changed them is paying dividends in the real world. These people are the living embodiment of the knowledge for action ideal or mantra that Wharton espouses. So there's another Wharton specific tidbit for all y'all on this presentation, which is knowledge for action. And I guess now would be a good time to cover that, right? Knowledge for action at Wharton. What on earth does that mean? How much did they have to pay a marketing agency for those three words? So really what it is, it's this whole knowledge for campaign. Knowledge for this, knowledge for that, right? Knowledge for action is 99% of the time how it comes out. And what Wharton believes is, if you provide faculty, centers, resources that are cutting edge, that offer the most advanced or forward-looking business knowledge, right? And you back it up by investing in programs, facilities, faculty, especially faculty in the research, that will trickle down, but translate into a better classroom experience. And that will enable anybody going to Wharton as a student, you can't just walk into a classroom, but as a student registered, an ability to, be the person when they roll out into the real world upon graduation, to be truly innovative thinkers, right? So when you think of Wharton, think innovation and pragmatism. And so knowledge fraction, so I'll give you a few examples. There is a department, and I'm going to get the name wrong here, right? But there is it's like a faculty research and teaching materials group or department at Wharton. And again, after this presentation, I'll send everyone here that emails me at mba@amarangelconsulting.com. I'll send you all like my cheat sheet on Wharton research and what have you, right? Just make sure the email works. And you'll see that they have invested a significant amount of money in faculty research. And you'll also see how, their knowledge for action is something that, they're investing in that Tangent Hall, right? They've invested in, you'll see, they make it a point to provide, to ensure that their professors or faculty are partnering with other schools on papers and all these things, right? So this whole knowledge for action aspect of it is really something that they take seriously. And what lies beneath that is a whole bunch of things. So I was referencing that whole teaching materials program. There's actually a group, and there might be this group at other schools. I haven't seen it in 13 years. Um, but they specifically take the research that Wharton professors are conducting, and um, they have a group that tries to bake it into new, or works with the professors to bake it into existing or new courses or new learning experiences, right? And so um, that is something that the school, like when they say knowledge for action, it's not just, it is high level, right? It encompasses a lot. They probably paid some marketing firm too much to come up with it, to come up with that jingle. But at the end of the day, they're very, very serious about it. And you'll see in the revised curriculum over the last few years with Dean Garrett, who is now the old Dean Garrett. He went to USC. Not sure how that works, but he implemented a lot of change. So first was, before him, there was a dean who is long gone. He created these 3 pillars. Don't worry about that so much. Dean Garrett started emphasizing less finance and more public-private partnerships. Listen, Wharton will always be a finance school. I know somebody's thinking like, oh shit, is Wharton not a finance school? No, no. Make no mistake, my friends, it is a finance school powerhouse, right? But beyond that, they were trying different things. They were revising the curriculum. They were trying to make it innovative, flexible, right, and relevant to the real world and pragmatic, right? So you see that Wharton has backed that up with these new facilities. So they have like a maker lab now. It's a Tangent Hall, 7 different levels. It's about whatever 50,000 square feet, 7 levels. Maker Lab, it's a collaboration between design school, collaboration between the engineering school, collaboration between Wharton. And if you have a startup, my friends, or you plan on working on a startup, you can get admittance as a member of Tangent Hall, and you can work on that. And there's a Maker Lab. There's even like ovens to make cupcakes in there, or cakes, or whatever people want to make as their idea. You don't have to be the next Google, right? You just have to have an idea that you want to work on collaboratively with other schools. So it's a very, very forward-thinking, pragmatic school, University of Pennsylvania overall, but they are taking steps to back that up and not just tell you that shit. They're putting their money where their mouth is. And I'll be honest with you, straight up, not lying. In my opinion, if my opinion counts, is that Wharton is the school making the biggest types of bold moves to try to attract the right types of students. So often I have clients who are disappointed they may have not gotten into Harvard or Stanford, right? But they got into Wharton. And this isn't just like a consolation prize when I tell them this, but Wharton is the most innovative of those. I mean, okay, listen, Stanford's innovative because of its location, because of this, and they have all these great relationships, and there's a ton of rich alumni, and you're right there, from Sand Hill Road and whatever, from the Apples and the Googs and the, well, not the Amazons, but the Yahoos. But Wharton, West Philadelphia. Okay, what's West Philadelphia? But really, they're the ones putting their money where their mouth is, and I definitely respect what Dean Garrett has done there. I'm not a fanboy. I'm not going to go there, but he, the new dean coming in, she's got some big shoes to fill, in my humble opinion. Anyway, let's move on. All right, so let me go to the next one. I'll just, in the interest of time, essay 2. Oh, look, we're essay 2. And this presentation might run over a little bit, but if you're getting value out of it and you're still on, please stay with me. Describe an impactful experience or accomplishment that is not reflected elsewhere in your application. How will you use what you learned through that experience to contribute to the Wharton community? 500 words, right? Actually, I think it might be less than that, but I think they lowered it maybe to 400 this past year. Okay, the point is, this essay has been around for 2 years in its current incarnation, just limiting the word count, right? Even before that, when the Wharton had an essay, which was basically, what do you bring to the table, right? Now, this essay is the one where you really must demonstrate what it is that you know about the program. This is where all your research that I can send your way comes into play. But here, Wharton, when they have had an SA2, because they haven't always had an SA2, some years they cut it, but looking into this season's application, we don't have the Wharton, it's, what is it? It's April 23rd, 2 months in lockdown. But really, I expect them to maybe drop this to encourage higher numbers of applicants to make it easy, right? But this essay has been around when they have had an essay two in some form. Before it was, how do you basically plan to contribute to the class? And it still is basically, how do you plan to contribute to your class? But now they've added a little bit more of a personal flavor to it. And boy, oh boy, does this personal not reflected elsewhere in your application impactful experience, it it ties people in knots, right? So don't get caught up on not reflected elsewhere in your application. And this is why. So everyone thinks, okay, so I have to tell them something personal. I have to tell them about something when I was 8, when I fell and I skinned my knee, or that bully pushed me on the basketball court. No, it's not that. What it is for Wharton, and again, hopefully they'll clarify this going forward. But what they're looking for is, you can definitely have something more personal. In fact, I've heard them say something more personal, a personal experience, and you can have everything. And I'm saying this seriously. It can be everything from a bad relationship that changed who you are as a person. It can be everything from sexuality. It can be everything from like DUI, right? Or like something bad where you got arrested and how it changed your life. It's okay to be honest. Listen, it can't have happened last week. Trust me. It has to happen when you were like 17 years old or 18 or something early, a mistake. But here, the most important part is, why is this relevant to Wharton? So where people get tripped up when they start waxing way too personal about something, um, my mom and my dad or whatever, it's really hard to extract yourself from that for the second part of the question prompt here, which is, how will you use what you learned through that experience to contribute to the Wharton community? If you have a bad relationship and you learned a lot about that, or somebody in your family you really loved passed away and that really whatever, you better start thinking about how on earth this is relevant to other people in your class. Now, and I'll give you an example of someone who, really quick here, of somebody who wrote about his brother passing away. His older brother, was a great mentor, um, just loved sports, all that stuff. His older brother loved baseball, got him into baseball as a little younger brother. This person ended up playing base. The younger brother, that was my client, ended up playing baseball in college. Didn't go to the majors or anything, but it's a pretty high competitive level. This person loves the game of baseball. In fact, the applicant that I worked with loved the game of baseball so much that they were volunteering in these youth groups to coach little kids, whatever. It was very important. So the one thing that this applicant I worked with, my client, I told him, it's totally appropriate to talk about something like this if you want to, but it's not focusing on the doom and gloom around your brother's death. It's focusing on the influence he had on you in your life. So describe an impactful experience or accomplishment or something. I want to tell you about my brother, who passed away, and in the short time that he was here on Earth, for 25 years, whatever it was, I want to tell you about the influence he had on me, and my, and my, how I view mentorship, how I view coaching, how I view whatever, and then baseball becomes a tool. We shared the love of baseball. Baseball becomes a tool to join all these clubs and mentor and leader and all this stuff. And then when he got later into how is this relevant to Wharton? Wharton has all sorts of leadership activities that reach out into the West Philadelphia community, which has had its socioeconomic struggles over the years. And there are plenty of opportunities for Wharton and Penn students to get involved, right? And so we wandered into that pasture in the essay about how what he wants to do, and it's not just volunteering to coach little kids in West Philadelphia. It's about raising money through the Net Impact Club. There is a fight night. I don't know if Wharton still does it, but there was literally a boxing event, a fight night, attended by students, where I think students would go to battle. I'm pretty sure they had headgear or whatever. But all these things were raising money for the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Philadelphia, whatever. But he was the perfect person to organize and run that and to make those types of contributions. And so anyway, that's a very quick example. But here, let's walk through the logic here. So anyway, people say not reflected elsewhere in your application. Well, okay, so certainly his brother's death, unfortunate, untimely, too early passing, was not reflected elsewhere in his application. But really for the other 99% of us who can't talk about that, what it is you need to talk about is, hey, I want to tell you about this project. Let's talk about something from work. Or even undergrad. I want to tell you about this organization or my involvement in it. And that inevitably, anything worth talking about as an organization is worth putting on your resume, is worth putting on the application, right? This is, again, what traps people or trips them up at Wharton. And that's why I believe this question prompt is poorly worded, but who cares what I think? So, but what I'm saying here is that you tell them about a project at work or at school, purely work project, but what you're saying, and here's the twist, you ready? What I learned about myself as a leader, about my relationships, about how I interact, what I learned about what I suck at or what I'm good at or what I can do or who I can be, that is not reflected in this project, right? ABC project, working for whatever client or deal or whatever. And so you go through and you basically think of it this, at the bottom here, I want to tell you about what I learned from my first job and how it changed my life, which is something my resume can never tell you, right? It's better to go back, by the way, and state something a bit earlier. That's why you can go back to IIT undergrad or wherever, uh, Princeton undergrad. You go back and you can talk about an organization that changed you because it set you on a trajectory that now that is now leading you to the doorstep of Wharton type thing. Think of it that way. But you can see that it's on my resume, but you can't tell how it changed my life. That's what it can never, that's what it can never do. And why should it be earlier, a bit earlier, not like last week, or maybe it could be this recent job, but because you don't have time to necessarily learn about yourself or put it into action to create things that are relevant to the Wharton classroom experience if you are stating something that is too recent, right? Think of it this way: who you are today and what you're accomplishing today is the product of a long process. And so I would encourage you, when you think about this stuff, go back to where that process started. What was the first big event or opportunity that started to change you? You don't change overnight, but it started to change you and put you on the path to where or who you are today, right? So usually that occurs first job. Usually that occurs during undergrad, especially during undergrad. Okay, so don't just start eliminating stuff because it happens to be on your resume, right? I mean, by that standard, any club you list on the resume or even your whole degree, you wouldn't be able to talk about anything from undergrad. Okay, I think I've beat that point to death. Okay, so let's just jump into this because it's very complicated. I know we're coming up on an hour here. Stay with me, grab some coffee, run back, hit pause if you're watching this later. Okay, so remember, the question is, how will you learn what you used through that experience to contribute to the Wharton community? Okay, so here in the very beginning, you want to establish what it is they're going to tell them. Do not muck around. Again, just like with essay one, Wharton doesn't want to roll their eyes. They don't want to read a bunch of background garbage information. Where is this going? Don't wax philosophical. Just get to the freaking point. So establish your main point, essay thesis. What is it that you're going to tell the reader, and therefore what you bring to Wharton? So tell them in as few sentences as possible, few words as possible, what happened, right? So think of it this way, right? I'm going to tell you what happened very briefly. And then in the subsequent paragraphs, I'm going to tell you different aspects of what I learned and how they relate to Wharton. And I'm going to do it that way because if I tell you everything in the beginning, at the end, I may run out of room. But at the end, I'll just end up referencing or writing over, repeating what I mentioned earlier and then trying to connect it to Wharton. So hear me out on this one. So tell them the story. I want to tell you about the time I went out into the jungle to help this nonprofit organization or to help a client company or to help something with a client we were evaluating, whatever, right? And this pushed me beyond, it went well beyond the scope of what I thought I was supposed to do, achieve, right? And caused me to grow as a person because I understood this wasn't just another 9 to 5 job or project, right? I found a bit of personal meaning in the people because I was there. I kicked the tires, I drove the car around, and I was face to face where usually when you're a consultant, maybe you just implement and leave. I had to see it to the bloody end, and that's what changed me, right? So, but anyway, go through in the beginning here. The framework pretty much is tell me about right here. Going through the experience changed me. It taught me about 1, 2, 3. So just tell them at a very high level. Don't get into exactly what goes on, right? So keep it at a high level. Okay. So it can be a non-work example, as I say. All right. So second paragraph, right? After you give them the 40,000-foot view of what happened in as few words as possible, now you start proving your story's relevance by connecting it to Wharton, right? This is the most efficient way to write this. And I've seen a ton of bad essays on this, right? This is the best way to cast your ideas. Pick a specific aspect of your experience. So remember you gave them the 40,000-foot version, the Cliff Notes version of it, and relate it to Wharton. So let's go back. Okay, I went through some experience. It pushed me beyond my comfort zone. It fundamentally changed me as a leader or manager. It taught me about the obligations I have, let's say, as a professional, not just to punch the time card or check the boxes, but to actually implement solutions, to fight for solutions, to advocate and push for whatever solutions that actually make a difference in the lives of our clients and their clients and their clients' clients. Okay, second paragraph. During our classroom discussions in New Product Development 101 and Entrepreneurial Finance, I plan to discuss my work alongside the client CEO in this country as we implemented a first of a kind, yada, yada, yada. Not only did I have to manage through all these obstacles, because nobody wants to change, right? Especially when they're looking at it. So somebody who's 24, 25, 26, telling somebody with gray hair that, no, you guys should do it this way, right? But not only do I have to manage through the limitations or perceptions of my credibility, the prejudgments of my age, or limited resources or not enough teammates, but I also had to deal with the nuances of a different working language, culture, customs, whatever, right? You were a fish out of water, more or less. So see this is a very simple example of how you will do it. Now, this person, I mean, this is an example, but this person or this example could have gone one more sentence into exactly what it is in that. So new product development, I plan to discuss my work here, during week. I know the class takes us into the same jungle where I worked, and I plan on offering, up my personal perspectives as we're in the jungle or wherever we may be, right? But the thing is here's a very important point. You see how because we did not get into at Wharton a large portion of the background and what you did in the opening paragraph, you just gave them the high level view. Now you can pick up a specific thing. Had you wrote a regular story and then try to connect it to Wharton, you would have already mentioned about implementing a first of a kind service, yada yada yada, limitations with the CEO, limitations with their staff, limitations with what infrastructure, logistics. Okay, you would have already covered that. That's why don't sell the wine before it's time. In the first paragraph, keep it high level. Then you pull out something that you specifically did here with whoever you did it with and why it was difficult, and you relate it to a class that is at Wharton. Boom, bada bing, you're done. Move on, rinse and repeat. So the next example here, during Technology Entrepreneurship 303, I will share how I led the subsequent spinoff of this service into its own technology company that specialized in, blenders, whatever, right? Vapes, right? Applications. And so again, this is a very succinct way of saying, of describing what happened. So of relating in one sentence, look, the applicant, the writer, they took the class, they read, you have to read, by the way, you have to find the classes and you have to read the class syllabus. So you'll say Wharton MBA in the Google, you'll say Wharton MBA, and then you'll Google the name of the class that you found. Don't just read the snippet, the one paragraph snippet that you find online on the Wharton website. Find the PDF, find the damn PDF, open it up, see what they do week to week, right? And then that is what will help guide you. Listen, this is some busy work. You go, you find the PDF, you find the syllabus, you see what they're learning about, and you're like, oh, snap. I now understand how something I did out in the jungle of some country I can't even pronounce I see how it's relevant to possibly this conversation during week 5 of this class, or when you read the expanded syllabus scope and what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, right? You're like, oh, I've been there. Oh, I did that. And you start getting all these ideas. So there's a little bit of reverse engineering here, and that is perfectly okay. So if you think you have these experiences and it was kind of a new product thing, an emerging area of finance or the world or whatever, go find that class at Wharton, do the homework, pull up the PDF, read through the expanded blurb, and you're like, Dazam, I know exactly how I can relate what I learned to this class. Okay. So, so let's see. Finally, in sources and uses of capital in Middle East, North Africa, country or in 404 negotiations 205, I plan to discuss how I facilitate the acquisition of specific type of technology, working with yada yada. Okay, there you go. Now, remember, you can add another sentence here about specifically what it is in negotiations 205 that you're going to cover, right? But this is enough, how it's being described here. And Remember, you get 400 words here. I think it used to be 500. Um, so just if you want to, if you did a lot of things that are applicable to a lot of different classes, without it turning it into a super duper laundry list, just to keep it more succinct, right? Again, what are you really trying to show them by writing this essay? You're trying to show them how much you know about Wharton. Remember, essay one, just think about this. Essay one is this person sane? Do they have rational goals? And can we help them with those goals? And can they achieve those goals if we help them? Essay two is, does this person really want to come here? This is where you have to sell yourself and what you know about the school, right? Of course, there's a little bit of selling. I want to go to Wharton. I love you, Wharton. In at the bottom of essay one, but the reality is that you this essay is where you really drive that point home, right? And so that's why it's structured like this. That is why they're asking you this question. Okay, describe an impactful experience or okay, same essay. I don't need to read that top part. Second paragraph. Now, so you see here, here's the framework. I put down some rules here. And it's kind of just what I stated, right? Pull a detail aspect from your story, one that was not discussed in detail from above, and then boom, connect it to something going on at Wharton. The best way to figure out what's going on at Wharton, look in the general direction. Remember the major that you were talking about before in essay one? Go read up all the classes. There's plenty of them under every major. And you go there and you find the class. Oh, okay, I can plug it in there. And then you find the PDF and you really dial it in, right? And you don't need a lot of words to do that. All right, so moving on. So the third paragraph, now that you've kind of got the momentum going here, it's straight up rinse and repeat, right? Through super effective communication for global managers and leaders 505, big communication challenges for entrepreneurship 510, and yet another class about communication and leadership. I plan to share the lessons I learned by working in, whatever country that I can't think of right now, and within a unique work culture, right? To communicate effectively, I had to learn language. Like if you've worked with Africa, you had to brush up or learn French or something like that, right? Yeah, you would put that here. I gained a deep, this is a little bit more personal here. I gained a deep appreciation for the nuances and implications for its use in differing environments, right? So through this experience, whatever, learn to tailor my message, yada, yada. So you can see here's like a more expanded paragraph. But remember, you can't always do this for every single paragraph. You can try, but you start to run out of room, right? So here are the rules, right? I gave you the framework, the rules, same as above, just emphasize a different Wharton aspect. So here we're emphasizing communication, emphasizing developing a cultural respect and appreciation. So this is more about than just developing a new innovative product, right? This comes more towards the end, I would say, when you want to end it on a nice note, a more personal note. And again, we see here, and oh, by the way, we see here that they're pushing more of the leadership development aspects here. And whatever, what they did, who they looked for, what they experienced. I believe my lessons in developing human capital and building management infrastructure with an organization experiencing exponential growth, for all you private equity, venture capital, entrepreneur type people out there, can only help bring our case studies and lectures to life during Human Capital and Organization Development 101, Business Life Cycles, Debt to Dust 202, as well as a 360-degree leadership training program. Right, that's it. And then again, rinse and repeat. So I'm just giving you different examples here because this essay really trips people up. I mean, this essay is the bane of my existence as an admissions consultant. This is probably the toughest essay out there, in my opinion, besides the Harvard and Stanford ones. So anyway, you can see here, what else would I tell you here? What always comes up here is people say, Paul, 360-degree leadership training program. I mentioned that in essay one. I can't mention it again. They're going to think I'm running out of ideas. I didn't do my homework. I'm like, no. You must mention that aspect in essay one. I strongly believe that. You don't have to mention it in essay two, but for God's sake, if it is relevant and it takes you another 4, 5, 6 words to add it in there and you have some room, then slug it in there. Otherwise, they're going to think it's weird. The Wharton admissions committee will think it's weird. They'll think it's a missed opportunity. Why didn't you do that? It's right there. It's a low hanging fruit. Okay. It's like, did you really, they'll think, does this person really know about the 360-degree leadership training program? Because it's so relevant here and they didn't mention it. Meanwhile, they don't know about all our conversations that we had where you cut it out because surely I can't mention it twice. Listen, when it comes to advice like that, if I mention it here, I can't mention it there, throw it away. You can mention leadership training program or whatever class in 2 different essays. You can't talk necessarily about the same aspects exactly from one to the other, because that is too much of a copy paste. But if it's relevant, put it in. If you're talking about a different aspect of the leadership training program or GMCs or whatever, knowledge for action, then keep, write about it both. Just make sure it has a different flavor. All right. Anyway, so yeah, and then there's one about mentorship, startup club. Anyway, that's that. Now, finally, in the last paragraph of the essay, right? Because remember, we're rinsing and repeating in a good way. Well, plot twist, you're not actually going to write the last paragraph. So a lot of people, when they write, and this, it goes for essay one, but every essay, they want to put a nice fluffy bow tie. I really believe that by contributing in class, Wharton will help me realize my dreams as I help other people realize theirs. And I would say, you don't want to know what you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say exactly what the Wharton Admissions Committee thinks, which is no shit. Thanks, man, or whoa, man. Thanks, guys and gals. Don't write shiznit like that. Okay, don't waste their time. For several reasons, it annoys them. It does end the essay on a fluffy, non-value added note, but you're screwing yourself because you just used 30, 40 words to write fluff, and you only have 400 words. And my opinion is you only want to go about 5% over the word limit, if that. There's another reason why you look at the Wharton application, because if there is a free-form text box where they want you to cut and paste your essay into that free-form text box, fair warning, public service announcement, that may cut the bottom of the essay off. And you may sitting there like, oh, I guess we missed the last scene, when they read the essay, because it will chop you off at 500 words, the end. So anyway, getting back on track, when the essay is done, then it's done. You have to resist the urge to write a non-value added bullshit, not telling them anything new. If you're not telling them anything new, then you're just basically summarizing at a very, very, very high level what you wrote about or whatever, and it's not effective. Just think about this. Anybody can say that, right? I mean, anybody can say anything, but it's just not even that specific enough to include in the essay. So listen, look at this paragraph. During my stint in yada, 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 I benefited greatly from the personal interest my CEO took in me. Not only about, okay, see where it ends, and mentoring as a powerful development tool, period. The end. That is the end of the essay. I'm dead serious, right? It's going to take you a little while to adjust, but when you're done, look for the exit sign, get the F out of the building, stop screwing around, because it only hurts you. They don't need a bow tie or a cherry on top at the end. That's not what it is. It's a waste of everybody's time. Okay. That being said, ladies and germs, I believe there might be some comments. Oh, wow, I just found the comments. So we have some questions here. Hello, everybody. Okay, so the latest one was at 11:19, which was a few seconds ago. So, okay, so on a lighter note, okay, so it's this is an overview. He's not only covering one school, chances are you'll not apply to only one, and he's only covering one school, chance. Okay. Let me look for the question marks. On a lighter note, why should someone work with you when you've given enough insights to improve? Yeah. Okay. Listen, this, Abhijay, if you're still on, my friend, this is a very good question. So if I just gave away everything, why should somebody work with you? So my purpose, obviously, there's some marketing intent and things like that here, but listen, aren't you guys on this presentation right now tired of showing up to presentations? And I'm not pointing to anybody specific that may be in this industry, but aren't you tired of showing up and not getting anything out of a presentation? And I will tell you this, take this and try to do it. And then when it's just not turning out that well, and when you just have trouble translating, that's where I come in. So I can give you all the tools, right? But trust me, having done this 13 years, watch when the execution portion comes and you're having these conflicting ideas. You're not exactly sure if you should mention something that you actually should be mentioning. And if you should be mentioning it, you're not exactly sure how you're going to plug it into two. So my goal, even on this conversation or presentation, give you something that you can leave with and you can put to work. And can I do this for Wharton? Not everybody needs a consultant, Mr. Abhijay. Maybe you don't. And if you don't, I mean, by all means, go. But if you do, then give me a call, mba@amerasiaconsulting.com. But that is very good. So, oh, thanks. I amazed. Selling his service well. Thanks. Yeah, the way I sell my service, and again, is not by telling you the ratio of men and women at a school, or not by scaring you into thinking you cannot do it. I'm tired of that shit. You guys can do this. I swear to God, I really mean this. You guys can do this. But do you have enough time? And as you go to the higher ranked schools, the better ranked schools, it gets a little tougher. The Harvard and Stanford essays are a pain in the ass. Anyway, so how I love the precision of advice, supported by. Thanks, man. I love you too. Okay, so how important are extracurriculars during your undergrad compared to postgraduate? In my case, I wasn't involved much with my school. Okay, so I would say extracurricular leadership as an undergraduate or graduate has to demonstrate certain leadership characteristics. If you haven't done anything, then you have a tough case for making the fact that at every stage of the game you were a leader. Now, you don't have to be prime minister or president, right? Um, of every organization, of every, you don't have to be secretary general. You don't have to, no, if you like a certain sport like badminton, cricket, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? All of that you can use as a leadership opportunity, because what you're taught, what these organizations have to show is your commitment to them, whatever you're doing. What if it's a religious or church group? You can talk about that because it's not about who you believe in or what you believe. It's about your commitment to community and to others and raising people up, right? So it's not about, again, indoctrinating people into a certain religion or belief, but about in serving your fellow man, for example. So if you don't have a lot, I would hope that you would be able to fill it with something else. So when you say leadership or volunteer experience, extracurriculars, right? I would challenge you as to that real assessment and what were you doing? So is that your assessment, vis-a-vis or compared with other people because you see somebody was secretary general or president of the undergraduate universe club? But if you were doing your own thing, or let's say you had to support your parents, or let's say you weren't fortunate enough to put your finger in every opportunity or club on campus, dip your toe is what I meant. You basically it's you need to explain that, right? But what's more important now is you don't need. Okay, I think the biggest mistake that people make is they now with work, they're like, I don't have any extracurricular experiences, dog. What am I going to do? And I would say, okay, listen, if you're burning the midnight oil, you're working 70 hours a week at work, you have an excuse. Just think about this. You have maybe 70, 80 hours in a week besides being at home with family and eating. Maybe you have more to be at work or to be at work and volunteering. And I think that a lot of people view, excuse me, extracurricular leadership or volunteer experience now outside of the office as, hey, this helps me. And I would say, hey, it doesn't, because most of the time, why aren't you getting that leadership experience at work? Why aren't you spending that time at work to do something? Why don't you use work and any committee or young analyst committee or whatever as an opportunity to advance the working culture there if they make you work a lot of hours, or to reach out to the community for whatever type of initiative that you genuinely care about, right? Maybe there's some internal knowledge sharing group among all the analysts and associates. Why aren't you stepping up and leading there? So don't look to the fuzzy dog pet rescue, because you owned a dog at one point in your life, or a cat, actually a dog, as to that's why I volunteer. So if it's not leadership oriented, so if you're ladling soup out every other weekend, that doesn't count. You can put it on your resume, but it doesn't move the needle for anybody, right? You have to be intimately involved. Let's say now you teach cricket to little kids in whatever neighborhood, right? Disadvantaged youth, at-risk youth, right? And you're like, Paul, I'm just like teaching these kids. I mean, it's no big deal. I'm like, no, man. That tells you a lot about the mentorship and coaching approach that you may also be using at work, which you may have also seen the importance of at your very first job or as an undergraduate when the light bulb or light switch clicked or whatever switched, and you started understanding the role that you could have in everything that you were doing, or most of the things you're doing, in positively affecting other people. And it doesn't have to have a title. Titles are affirmation of maybe your impact, but titles and awards and bonuses and cool jobs and Ferraris and whatever, trophy husbands or wives, those are all the product, those are all the outcome of a process that you've been involved in. And that's why essays that Stanford and Harvard, and in this case Wharton a little bit, that's why it's important that they give you those opportunities to tell that story. So to recap here, because I'm wandering here, it's been a long presentation, but to recap, your extracurricular experience won't mean anything if you have it, if it's not more leadership oriented and it's not consistent And so you don't have to always be doing some type of sport or art or club, but you have to be stepping up in leadership roles and trying different things, especially as an undergraduate, right? You only have an excuse if you had to work during an your undergraduate career, if you were sick. But if you're sitting around getting high, playing PlayStation, eating pretzels or Cheetos or whatever, don't bring that up. It's not an excuse. It's not relevant. And that will probably exclude you from some of the very top schools. So if your GMAT or work experience doesn't exclude you, not being a leader at every stage that you can possibly be, obviously not when you're 5 years old, but not being a leader when you've had the opportunity to be a leader during undergrad or at work, that will exclude you most likely from Harvard and probably Stanford. I mean, both of those schools. Wharton, maybe not. You want to know why? Because Wharton doesn't really ask a question about leadership, right? So they're not concerned about what it is that you were involved in necessarily. What Wharton is, and remember, this is the vast difference between Wharton and Harvard and Stanford, right? Harvard and Stanford are a group apart, but Wharton cares, and why you should, even if you don't have a lot of extracurricular experience today or in the past, still apply to Wharton is because, or cast your lot and throw, whatever, throw your money in the pot, is because what they want to know in their pragmatic point of view is, can whoever asked me this question, I think it was I amazed, they want to know, can I amazed get a job, right? They want to know if whoever Abijay can get a job. That is, it sounds very remedial and basic, but they have to know that, right? And anybody on this conversation, if you say in your essay, or that it's say a safer play nowadays, say, I'm planning on returning home and I could take up this job or that job. Don't say, even Wharton, right? In fact, you would want to emphasize the global footprint of Wharton because you are going to go back home, right? So in any interview with an admissions committee or anything that you have to go through in the process, any type of document, if you say that you're going to return home, in your essay, say that you're going to return. And I'm talking about any interview with anybody in this whole long process that you may have to go through. Your goal, if you're from abroad, upon graduation, you're going home, right? And that is what you need to stick to. And that's what you should say. I won't say anything more about that. Anyway, okay, YTG. What up? I have worked in 5 different organizations last 7 years. Will it hamper my chances? Like any good economist, which I am not, I will say it depends. And okay, so this is a good question. I would say, if it is all consistent with, like, in consulting, and you're bouncing around consulting, and you went from like financial services consulting and now you're in working for Dahlberg or Bridgespan, and you're basically you found your groove, you found your spot. This is what you want to do. You want to have social impact. You love it, right? Um, then that is completely fine, right? Same thing goes for banking. But if you're over here like running a donut shop, and then the next day you're running whatever startup that makes, I don't know, wet noodles, and then you're bouncing over here, you're going to try your hand at private equity because your dad or mom hooked you up. That is completely inconsistent. I mean, I would say, listen, stop bouncing so much. Stick to one company or one industry for a couple years so that you can convince. I mean, would you convince you of that you're serious about whatever it is you say you're going to do if you keep bouncing around? No, if it's schizophrenic, right, and it's all over the place. Yes, if maybe you just haven't found your spot. Now, 5 companies in 7 years, that's pushing, I think, the upper limit of your bounciness, right? I think you'd want to kind of stay, because you have to consider, I need to get recommendations for business school. And if I left people in the lurch, or if I just bailed, or if I didn't really get to know anybody that well, as in a boss at my last company or this current company, and then they bounced, well, then your recommendations aren't going to look that good. So that's the other thing you want to consider, right? All right. So hey, I amazed. No problem. So, Rahul says, do you think being the youngest board member and then becoming the VP of my foreign university's Indian association makes a strong point? I am finishing up undergrad now. So you think being the youngest board member? Well, I think it's part of it. Yeah, definitely. I think, listen, you probably want to go to Harvard or Stanford. It's every single person's dream, right? Maybe Wharton. But what I would say is this. And this is where it gets hard for Harvard and Stanford versus Wharton, because Wharton does not ask as deep of a question as Harvard and Stanford do. But it's like, why do you care about that? Why do you want to do that? Now, obviously, we all want to work hard. We all want to do what our mom and dad say. We all want to, try to get that good job and be president of this club or that club. But you have to get beyond, and that's the requisite. Harvard and Stanford expect you to have president of such and such club, youngest board member, yet such. That shows evidence of leadership. But what they want when they ask you what matters most to you and why, or Harvard essays basically tell us anything you want to tell us that we wouldn't already know or could readily assume about you because we're not stupid. That's when you say, listen, I want to tell you the reasons or rationale behind a lot of my accomplishments, right? And it was one way. I wanted always to prove myself for a long time. And you have to be honest, for a long time, I was checking the boxes, even though I was doing well, getting straight A's, leading this, leading that, youngest person ever to own a Ferrari. I didn't understand the meaning of it until one day when I went and I did this project at this organization as this, and I found out the limitations of my approach, which is I'm the golden boy or gal, and I'm just doing everything because mom and dad said, because life lays out a path for me, whatever. Finally, I understood what it meant to be a leader because of this experience, and I changed the way that I was thinking. I changed the way that I was acting, and ever since that day, I've gone on and applied it here, here, and here. So you have Rahul, you haven't got to the end ever since that day because you haven't graduated and started working and things like that. You're going to want to work a couple years so you can say, and ever since that day, I've applied it when I went to Bain, BCG, McKinsey, and then you go on and you would say whatever. And this leads me to HBS or Stanford. I know we're covering Wharton today, but that's you're finishing up your undergrad now. It seems like you're doing everything very well, including, remember, going to a foreign university's India Student Association. There's something there that you may have missed. Going abroad, right? I know, like if you're going abroad, that shows, and excuse my French here, but that shows balls, right? Shows a bit of testicular fortitude, we'll call it. Now, I know, listen, maybe you flew over, on some luxury, whatever, plane, and they rolled out the red carpet and they hoisted you up and carried you through the football stadium. Okay, maybe that's what happened. I doubt it, but um, whatever it is, it takes guts to leave everything and everyone that you may know, if the culture is dissimilar, right? And move all the way across the world and be dropped by yourself in the middle of the hood or the middle of wherever, a cornfield in Iowa, right? Um, and have to figure everything out. And the reason you can say that you did that is because at an early age, like you can say, let's say you grew up wealthy. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say, let's say you grew up wealthy and you always had everything handed to you. If that's the case for Harvard and Stanford, then say it. It's okay. Some people grew up poor, some people grew up rich, but you would say, I wanted a challenge. And it wasn't until I moved to the States or Europe or Canada or wherever, a different country, that I began to stand up on my own 2 feet and realize and appreciate everything that I had, but also realize that I had an obligation to pay it forward, right? And I learned that not only by immigrating and having to do everything for myself. Mom's not there to do my laundry, or dad actually is not there to do my laundry, excuse me. Um, I had to do all those things and learn everything that I felt I needed to learn to grow up. But then I realized that wasn't enough. I realized that I could dream bigger, have a bigger impact. That's why I started taking on these leadership positions. And changing things. It's went from being an all boys club to an all boys and girls club, right? It went to being something just for the Indian community to reaching out to other communities that maybe India is at odds with. I don't know what communities it would be, but whatever, right? So you were using it instead of a Indian guys and gals club and having it be insular. You took it and you made it something that was outreach into the community, whatever. If it's in Iowa, so much the better because of the contrast. And we made people understand and celebrate Diwali, whatever, right? All these corn farmers. So it'd be something like that. So can someone from a non-IIT admission get background in Wharton? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just be real with you. Like it depends on what schools that you go to, right? But I've had all sorts, including people from IIT, BITS, Delhi University or University of Delhi, Pune. I actually had a guy from Pune get into Harvard, if you can believe that, huh? How's that one? Yeah, that's right. I put that on my wall right there. So anyway, but yeah, listen, IITs, we all know. I know. Apparently, they're creating a new one every year. Who knew? There'll be one on every corner eventually, right? But in all honesty, don't let that dissuade you, right? Especially if you punch above your weight. Meaning, listen, if you go to a workplace and everybody else happens to be IIT, God bless them, right? And you're doing just as well, if not better, right? Then the admissions committees will know and see that, right? So it's not where you started out from. to be honest with you. It's where you ended up. And yeah, okay, I'm not talking about in the future, but listen, if you came from a place where when you were in secondary school, nobody in your community or nobody in your whatever had even gone to university, and you became the first in the family or community or village or whatever, then that is what they care about. It's the fight in the dog, as they say, right? And so that whole magnitude of where you started to where you ended up going to BITS or whatever university, right? Delhi University, University of Delhi, whatever. That is what they care about. So, inevitably, people at IIT will have good, rich experiences, right? But that is not enough to break the top two schools, I would say. It's certainly enough. Listen, we're talking about Wharton here, so I'll stick to that. But you don't, whatever school you may have come from, please apply to Wharton. Um, and that's not to Wharton's discredit. Just like you must apply because I see it all the time that people from non IITs get in. So yeah, and that's Wharton on down, right? They really because when the schools start to become more pragmatic with what you do now and what you want to do in the future, and also like where you started and where you may have ended up right now with your job and your influence and who you're in charge of, and if you started something up, that is what Wharton's looking for. But they're especially looking to see how much you can plug it into a short-term goal that makes sense in a job that you can get when they're thinking like a recruiter. Okay, so Sonal says I have a question, but she didn't ask the question. So Sonal has a question, everybody. All right. So, uh, okay. Is Can says, is it a good idea to tell your interviewer what other schools you apply to? Only if they ask. I would never volunteer that information. Here's the thing. Schools will ask you that on the application, on the online application, the one that type into. And what I would say is, I'll give you this advice. You do what you want, right? I'll give you how I would do it and what I would think, not what you should do. But the reason they ask that is they want to know if you are in like with them or if you are in love with them. Are they the prettiest girl or boy at the dance, right? And so I've seen people get into Harvard and Stanford and get rejected by Wharton, right? Because at some point that may have come up in the application. Whenever you see a school ask that in an interview, read some interview reports for Wharton, by the way, or come up in an interview on the application, they have a chip on their shoulder. They're worried about you denying them, right? It's like you go up to somebody at a dance and they're like, no, awkward, right? So they just don't want to waste your time, their time, whatever, going through all this rigmarole with the application process, right? It's not going to ding you because obviously if you're an exceptional candidate, they're going to want to have a shot at you regardless, right? But schools just know right away. Schools that ask that are worried as to whether or not you're going to bring them to the altar and then bail, right? And then, so how do you think about answering that question? Well, I would say right away, especially if you're applying to schools in states in Europe, and you're saying, I want to go to NCIAD or HEC Paris or LBS school because of or whatever school you're applying to. Let's just say I want to go to HEC Paris because of its Paris location, yada yada yada, and because I'm in love with the Parisian culture and whatever. I like wine. Don't mean to stereotype or no disrespect, but whatever it is you're saying that's central to the geography there, and then they ask you, oh, hey man, what other schools you applying to? And you say, oh, Stanford and University of Toronto and University of Mexico City or whatever. They're like, okay, this guy's or gal's full of shit. I mean, it's not consistent. Let's dive deeper into that. What if you're applying to Columbia and you say, I'm applying to Columbia because of your location, New York City, world's greatest learning laboratory, a few subway stops from every industry and every industry expert one could imagine. Okay, that's why part of the reason I want to go there. They ask you what are the schools you're applying to. Chances are you should probably say something like Wharton and Booth. And you want to explain that answer if they give you more room, because you want to say, especially in an interview, they ask you in an interview, but also if there's a free form text box, right, on the application, the way you want to explain it is, listen, I like Wharton because of its expertise, in its access to industry all over the world, right? I like Chicago because it has this deep domain expertise, drill down to oblivion expertise in a certain type of finance, right? But why Columbia is my number one choice is because you take the best aspects into the Venn diagram of Wharton, you take the best aspects of Booth, and you marry them together and they have a baby, and that baby is Columbia Business School. So you get the point. So you're saying, yes, this is a great school. It has A. This is a great school. It has B, but you have A, B together. And then that's it. So there's no inconsistencies there. And you can also say, by the way, I went or I know a bunch of people using the Columbia example. I went to Columbia or whatever school. I visited. I know a lot of alumni. I worked with a lot of alumni. A lot of my seniors at IIT, BIS, University of Delhi, Pune, they went to Columbia. I showed up to the presentation in Mumbai. Okay, whatever. But what you're trying to say is that the personal interaction I've had with members of the Columbia community or whatever school is vastly superior. And it's nothing against other schools, but it's vastly superior. There are even people I've emailed and they've emailed me back, out of the blue on LinkedIn or whatever that they put me in touch with. It was amazing. I had the best, interaction with them and they made me feel like a part of the family. Okay, the end, right? No one can deny that. That is a fact that you experienced, right? And so even if you're applying to Wharton, which is a better ranked school. If you say, when you're talking to the Columbia, obviously, admissions or on the application that I just had a superior experience and that's what sealed the deal, well then, hell yeah, that is convincing, right? I would also give them another thing about the whole AB having a baby, right, type thing. But that is what seals the deal, right? And who are they going to say, no, you didn't talk to that alumni and he or she didn't tell you that, or you did talk to them and it was actually a shitty experience because we had tapped into the phone line and were listening to the conversation. You didn't. No, that just no. Okay, don't go there. All right. Anyway, so let's see here. Wow, you guys have a lot of questions. Chris Morris says, does having average extracurriculars at IIT? Chris Morris went to IIT. I think I remember you. At IIT undergrad, but good extracurriculars at job make the swim for average. Listen, so Chris, um, you want when you say average, that's okay. Listen, no disrespect, that's your characterization. So you weren't the president or anything like that. So I've had plenty of people I'll give you an example of some guy that got into Harvard this year from IIT who basically didn't really have any good extracurriculars. And what he talked about was he actually started a business that failed, right? A startup supposed to deliver like cigarettes and beer and cotton candy and pretzels at like 3 a.m. It was some like delivery service after midnight, right? And it failed, right? And so he talked about how that changed him as a person and because of the reasons that it failed and how, when he wanted to call it quits basically on his own terms, whatever. But he learned to trust a lot of the drivers and it just changed him from being a smarty art, hey, here's the IIT kid. Look, everybody, clear the floor. Everybody, here comes the guy who knows what he's talking about, right? And so uh, if that is the perception of you, whether you're at work or the admissions committee may have it or whatever, this guy's maybe too smart for his own good. You want to smash that, but the best thing is through these examples to say it's not like I was president of this club or that. You should have those if you're applying to Harvard and Stanford, right? Because they have to see evidence of leadership. But if you don't have that, you can come up and say, I want to tell you about this. Out of all the things that I experienced in my life, I want to tell you about this company I started. I only ran it for 6 months, but it changed me as a person. So all the things extracurriculars that you're involved in, it doesn't necessarily matter as much about the leadership title. What matters is if you can say how it changed you. Now, can anybody say that? I'm sure, right? So you want to have a conversation of the leadership title and how it changed you. So it's not enough. So somebody asks, now that you gave away all this information, what do I need you for? Idiot, like, so long, Paul, right? No, what I'm saying is like, you can have all the right aspects on your resume, but trying to put that down on paper and articulate why it matters to you or what you learned or got out of it, that is really hard. It's really hard for me. And I've been doing this for a while, right? To figure that out. So don't count yourself out because you went to a certain school or because you don't have certain you weren't the leader, you weren't secretary general, right? If you were just on a committee, because here's the thing, remember how I talked about your magnitude, where you started and where you ended up? What if you got to school and you got to IIT, wherever, and you didn't speak English that well because you were raised in, the uppermost part of Rajasthan, right? And like you, and no offense to Rajasthan at all. I don't even know where that is. So, okay. So you go through and you basically are saying, when I got to IIT or wherever, right, I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground, right? I had just rolled off the apple cart and my English skills were terrible, right? But I knew the only way I was ever going to achieve what I wanted to do at IIT, because it's a lifelong dream, first guy out of the area or gal or person to ever go to an IIT or college for that matter. And you would say, so I basically, so it's like where I started from. I stuttered, I sweated. The first time I did it, I ran off the stage, whatever, started crying, wanted my mommy, whatever. And so you stay, this is where I started from, right? But I forced myself to get back out there, and eventually I won some debate thing. Okay, yeah, maybe I was president of the debate club or secretary, whatever it's called, right? Or maybe but what's more important is that what you can say is I totally changed as a person first, right? I gained the confidence. I stopped caring if I looked stupid. I stopped caring if other people would make fun of me. I stopped caring that I would lose every single debate, which I did, right, by the way, for the first year. I stopped worrying that my English made me look like a hillbilly or whatever, right? And I started like just focusing on what I could do. So you see how you're changing? What I could do to improve myself. And then once I did, I actually did win some debates, right? Maybe you're not world champ. I actually did get elected to this like new member committee or whatever, right? But really what I decided to do is I decided to implement a new program where we stopped taking all the best English speakers on campus and trying to get them into our club because they're ringers and they would just get first anyway and beat all the other IITs and whatever, right? You say, what I did was I started opening it up to people who would never think they were good enough for debate, a guy or gal just like me a couple of years ago. And I went after that and I got all these people involved. Why? Because we're not going to be because yes, I'm changing, but I realized we're not going to grow up and be professional debaters for the rest of our lives. Rather, what's more important about what's going on here at university or at IIT is people growing up and building confidence and leading in their own little way, big or small, and getting the skills that they need to get the jobs in a very pragmatic sense that their families depend on, but also that they feel that they can achieve something on their own, something they would have never done because it's not easy, because they don't get the points automatically, because whatever, just because they like it and it proves themselves and they can improve other people. Okay, you get it. But that is what I'm talking about when I say a good extracurricular, right? So yes, the title helps Harvard or Stanford or Wharton immediately assess, this guy or gal is, was a leader and people recognize them for that. But it is the meaning that you find in that you want to articulate, especially for Harvard and Stanford. And that second essay for Wharton that they might have this year, you can articulate that in there, how it changed you, because it changed you and molded you into the type of person, not overnight, that now sees obstacles as opportunities, whoosh, right? And now you've gone after that tough job, McKinsey job, BCG, whatever job. Maybe you're the only female at that job. It's traditionally male. All the guys say, "Oh, girl can't do that," right? We know how that goes, especially women know how that goes, right? And they still said, you know what? F you, I'm not listening to conventional wisdom, patriarchy, yada, 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 pigmatism, right? I am going to go after that. And lo and behold, I got that job, right? Now I'm the only woman sitting in a private equity venture capital on a Schlumberger oil rig. You get it. Okay, so hold on. Let me see. I'm missing some stuff. Okay, talking of recommendation, is it okay to take? Okay, hold on. Let me go back. Rahul has a question. What is your take on? Okay, deferred MBAs. I'll come back to that. Divya says, is 710 good enough with 3 years of work experience? I would say for what? Are you applying to business school? Okay, 710, 3 years of work experience. 3 work experience is fine. I mean, listen, there's a lot that could be in. You could be 3 years, twiddling your thumbs, or 3 years doing, saving, whatever, saving the sick in the middle of the Sinai Desert, right? So 710 would be good enough. I've had candidates, non-IIT, from India, female, get into Harvard with a 690, 680s, something like that. Now, listen, you don't want to be the person that's on the outlier. You don't want to be that one person where it's like, can you believe somebody got in here with a 680? Like, who is that person, right? The first day of class. No, you don't want to be on the fringes, the outliers, right? You want to be more towards the whatever. You want to be in the middle of that bell curve, right? And so if you've only taken the GMAT once, and you feel like you left money on the table, you were sick, baby crying in the background, maybe you had COVID, whatever, go and take it again. I would tell anybody, take the GMAT at least twice, right? If you were doing so well on your practice tests and then you just crapped the bed the day of the test, right? Then go back in there and retake it again. I mean, to get to a 740, you're looking at 3 more questions, right? It all depends on what questions these are. So, or if you can do better on the quant and you've isolated where you screwed up, then go back, focus on that, retake it, right? But if you've only taken it once, take it again. Because what's the difference between a 710 and a 750? besides 40 points, besides being waitlisted and not waitlisted, right? Besides like getting in to Harvard and possibly being waitlisted. I mean, this is more relevant to Wharton. Harvard, if they like you, they'll take you 710, no problem. Come on in, sit down. Wharton is more fanatical about the GMAT, in my opinion, from what I've seen. So this might be anecdotal, not statistically significant, but what they're saying and what you want to basically what goes on there is they're very concerned about the rankings. Like Wharton is this like type of school or kid or that we all know that's always thinking, not scheming, just always thinking about the angles and the opportunities, right? So that's where it may hurt you. That being said, I've had guys and gals from India, and I'm assuming you're from India, Divya. Correct me if I'm wrong. You could be from LA, I don't know, San Francisco. But basically, Harvard and Stanford won't care. I've had guys and gals from India get into Wharton with 720, 730s. Now, they did work for Bain, BCG, McKinsey, right? So, there's a little bit of that going on for them. All right, 3 years of work experience. Okay, again, you want to show progression, leadership, whatever. All right, so YTG says, talking of recommendation, is it okay to take it from someone who is 3 years plus in experience compared to senior leadership? Yeah, you want to take it from ideally you want to take it from your immediate supervisor, and hopefully your immediate supervisor has a lot of years of work experience and has a pretty cool title: director, senior director, partner. It depends on obviously the company and whatever, but you definitely want one. If they are your direct boss, even if they're only 3 years older, take it from them. You have to. And then the second one, you get higher up, right? Boss's boss, whoever. With senior leadership might face a challenge in getting the write up. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, the name of the game with getting recommendations for Wharton, since this is a Wharton presentation, right? But for any school is you want to deal with people who are easy to work with. You certainly have to get it from your boss. You want to remind them and write up something that reminds them of all the things you've done. There's 2 questions. What is something you've done well compared to your peers? What is a piece of constructive criticism you give to the applicant? What was the response? And you want to fill those things out. Remind your boss of all the things he or she may have told you over the years. Don't just say, okay, here's 5 schools I'm applying to. Good luck. Because you're going to get a shitty recommendation. They may love you. They may want you to marry their kid one day, but they won't remember shit because they have 1,000 things going on and whatever, right? And they can't remember if it was last year, the year before. Once you get older, like me, it's just everything becomes a big ball of blur, right? Was that last week or 10 years ago? I honestly can't remember. All right. What are some examples of great, leadership, best examples ever? LOL. Why, thank you. How do I make the jump in your application? How to make the jump in the application? If you're going to Wharton to pivot from an engineering career to finance consulting. Okay. I was in this situation. This is what I had to do. I would focus on, okay, what are you doing for engineering, right? So I was working in a factory, operations management, production. And so what I said was short-term goal, I want to go work for McKinsey, Bain, BCG, whatever, in their operations group, their logistics group, their manufacturing group, their heavy industry group, right? So listen, you're not going to business school to become an engineer again, right? So and engineers have gone on. So basically what you're trying to say is you want to go and you want to do something that is within your industry or your expertise. If it's manufacturing, go work for McKinsey. It's a management consultancy, of course, but go look at their website, guys and gals. Seriously, do the research here. Go in there, find out what the freak that group is, the name of it for Bain, BCG, McKinsey, right? Fine, go look at the job advertisement, see what an associate does, right? And see, like an engineer, again, this is for Wharton, see how much of the job description you can check, because I know you run projects or work on projects. So you're going to work on projects for clients at McKinsey or BCG or Bain within a certain industry group, right? Even if you want to switch to like marketing, strategic marketing, dude, or you're not a dude, but go and just be as conservative, right? Because realistically, that's the job you're probably going to get. Don't scare the shit out of the admissions committee at Wharton. Talking about you, Wharton, where you're too drastic of a career changer, right? They're going to think you don't have your head screwed on straight. You didn't do your research. It's just impossible, whatever. And you may say, oh, I know I can do it. I've always done. Okay, that's fine. But you only have like 1,000 words to get your message across. So don't make life difficult, right? Stop dreaming so much, calm down. Anyway, what's up with these aspirations? All right. So that's how you would do it. And then longer term, what you can say, by the way, here's the bonus. Longer term, you would say, I want to create my own firm, or when you have to think aspirational. And remember, like 80% of your goals at Wharton or whatever is short term, pragmatic backup plan. But longer term, what did I say? Okay, you can say something like this, like like let's say you're a manufacturing engineer, plant engineer. You go, you're consulting, you get all that experience, operations efficiency, Toyota production system, just in time. You're a green belt, you're a black belt, you're a ninja, right? You go on and get all these things. You go back, you start your own manufacturing firm. You say, listen, I want to bring India's manufacturing into a new age, right? I want to put it on par with whatever other countries are out there that supply all the world's stuff, right? And I am, but and why I want to do this is because I see that there's a lot of potential, a lot of waste, a lot of this poor infrastructure. This will require all sorts of things, right? Not only my firm, not only introducing new methods and technologies and changing mindsets, not only working with the government, private partners, public-private partnerships to help companies navigate that and maybe affect government policy in the industry, whatever. So you don't have to get into all that for Harvard and Stanford. You're going to have to, but that's how you would say my goal is to basically revolutionize Indian manufacturing. So give me a week and I'll get it done. Anyway, something like that. Tristan says, bro, I'm a freshman. Why am I here? That's honestly, Tristan, that is exactly what a freshman would say. Keep doing it. You're definitely freshmaning it up. I love the webinar. Any advice for someone trying to? So 4M112 says, loved the webinar. Okay, that's all I needed to read. Next question. Any advice for someone trying to break into private equity? Oh my God. Dude, trying to break into private equity venture capital. Okay. What I would say, I mean, I don't know where 4AM 112 is. I don't know what opportunities, big city, small city, what's around you, who you know. But if you want to break into private equity, listen, you can be the math genius, analytical genius and go do that. But honestly, like if you're trying to break into it, I'm assuming you're in an operations, manufacturing, production environment, an operations environment. Okay, you don't have to be making widgets, but operations environment, that is the first step. You have to know the industry that this private equity firm is investing in many different industries, or at least the operations. And then you have to network your ass off. This is a reason why connections matter, right? And so you have to start cultivating that. I would join. What do I see? I mean, you could go work for consulting, like in India. Let's just assume you're in India. I see a lot of people. They work in consulting, and then they transition to a private equity firm. If there is a new fund opening up, sometimes they'll try to poach the guys from where they used to work at Sequoia, Lightspeed, whatever. But then, if not, what I would say is, and this is going to be extremely challenging, and as you know, but I would say go and after you're done with the operations job, try to transition to consulting job. Try to give them an asset, the private equity firm an asset that they would use. So go look at who are the young guys and gals working there, see what they may have done. Look for the people that are more non-traditional, and then see what you have to do. But what I've seen is it's just if it's possible, you're going to have to go to a small fund, one that start up. They're going to work you like a dog, and that's it, right? I mean, it is possible. But anyway, hey, Paul, if you answer my question asked earlier, I will wish you have cool dreams. Okay. Dude, post the question again so I don't have to scroll up. Mr. Clifford says, if Wharton wants you to fall in love with them, does that mean they're not forthcoming? No. So, okay. Scholarships. Very good question. Very good question here. So, no, it doesn't mean they're not forthcoming with scholarships. They just want to give their scholarships, their heart. They want to give it to somebody who loves them back, right? So, listen, the way it works is, want to know who gets scholarships? People with high GMAT scores, right? They say it's all need based. Okay, I don't know what that means necessarily, because what I see from my neck of the woods, 13 years doing this, over 650 people helped, right? But what I see is that they're giving it to the people who come from certain industries, private equity, venture capital, especially, but people with monster GMAT scores. Yeah, I mean, regularly I see people to Wharton get $100,000 scholarship from India, right? I don't know if you're from India or not, but wherever the people that are getting these scholarships, I'll tell you, and whatever. I mean, I'm just going to tell you what I see, right? I don't know if it's right or wrong. For India, and not to say that excludes any other country out there. Female, IIT or University of Delhi, or BITS, high GMAT score, always a high GMAT score. 740 is the bare minimum. But when you start hitting 750, 760, 770, and apparently they cap it at 800 for some reason, but that is where the money starts rolling in, right? Stanford and Wharton, Stanford and Harvard, very stingy. Schools that give out a lot of money, Kellogg. Booth tends to get out a lot of money. Wharton by far is probably the most liberal when it comes to giving out money, and Columbia will give out money, right? Columbia a little more stingy out of those groups, but Wharton and Booth by far are like I don't know what it is. They won the lottery, Powerball, whatever, but they give out a lot of money. Just um, honestly, if I had to distill down to one thing, hygiene mat, right? And that's all. Because they're trying to pull you. Remember how I said earlier, listen, you got a 710 or something, a little low for Wharton, but it might not be low for Harvard because Harvard doesn't give a shit, right? Stanford too. They don't get they if they like you, they like you. Come on in. They don't care. Wharton is not that way at all. Up the GMAT score, you'll get the the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and then that's it. All right, so why would they offer scholarships to those who because they're okay. Why would they offer a scholarship to someone who they're not in love with, but will be with incentive? Because they know the incentive will get them to come to the school, to get them to sign on the line that is dotted. Then, okay, let's not bullshit here. Anybody who gets accepted to Harvard or Stanford is not going to Wharton. Wharton could even pay them a salary to go there, and they still wouldn't go to Wharton, right? And I agree with not going to Wharton in that situation. No disrespect to Wharton. It's just a vastly different world and opportunities that lay beyond, depending on where you want to go, what you want to do, right? But Wharton is saying, okay, this person, they do fit here. They wrote damn good essays. We're not sure, but we really want them because they're from whatever industry. We like their personal story. Monster GMAT score, right? Let's give them $100,000. I see $100,000 thrown a lot. 50 or 100 thrown around at Wharton, a lot, and we'll see, right? And listen, even if you're going to Harvard, that makes you think, right? So if you don't accept, they didn't actually spend the money. It goes back into the pot. They'll allocate it to somebody down on the, further down on the list, and that's it. So they're, listen, money changes a lot, right? All right. So Yana says, Paul, do you think COVID-19 will change the Wharton admissions approach to round one this fall? Oh God, I wish I had a crystal ball. Should applicants change something? Okay, excellent question. I would say don't change. I mean, you can't really change your application strategy that much because COVID is affecting pretty much everywhere. What I think is going to happen is that, okay, COVID hopefully will be out of the picture by the time you actually have to enter school. So that would be the fall of 2021. Hopefully, Trump will have solved it by then. Kidding. All right. So, but you, what you say? Okay. So what I would say is you can't really change too much. You just have to apply. I would apply to all the schools you plan on applying to, hoping that honestly, Trump and everybody else around the world gets a lid on this thing, right? Vaccine, whatever, right? I think that if it does extend to that point, which I think is not likely, this fall, yeah, definitely. Don't believe like you're going to be leaving your house before the end of May. It'll screw up this year. The year after that, you're going to enter. Now, what's going to happen because this year they're going to roll over a lot of the international applicants, I think, into next year's class because there's a whole visa issue where they're not issuing visas. All the offices are closed. But what they're going to do is they're going to have to push some people to next year. They may offer some people, hey, virtual first term, and then you can come to campus once we get through the backlog. If COVID's done, once we get through the backlog of visas, student visas, then you can come. But I think there'll be a late start. I think they may give the option to some internationals to come at the beginning of the year, like after right around the end of the New Year. I think that if none of that happens, they'll roll over the people who get accepted this year to next year, and that affects you because there'll probably be fewer slots for international students. But what will probably happen is you'll see that they will expand, and Harvard's done this before, for example. They will, and Wharton, they'll make the class bigger. They'll add 50 seats, whatever they'll do, right? They'll add 50 seats. They may give away more money. That's usually what happens. That's what happened around 2008, 2009. I'm old. And what else will happen? I think that they may increase the ratio of international students. It depends on the election that's coming up. That's another thing that should weigh into your decision a little bit, right? But anyway, don't ask me to expand on that anymore. I don't want to talk about politics. Everything's great. All right. So, all right. But should they change their strategy? I'm trying to think what else I know about. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Yana, like a lot of the admissions committees don't even know what they're doing, what's going on, because there are no plans right now to open up the student visa processing. It's like asking when or trying to determine when COVID's going to be over. It's like how many people are going to stay at home? How many people are going to listen? How many people are going to stop screwing around? It's like really hard, right? So I don't think you guys that are applying for the fall of 2021 are that screwed. So I don't think it should really change anything. unfortunately, the people this year that are, I keep getting questions from my current clients and people that got in. It's like, you got into Harvard and now this. So anyway, Chris Morris from India, I believe, says being a high performing product manager in a major journalism house, a good background for HSW. Okay, I'm gonna say, listen, you want yes or no? I'd say yeah, it is. It is because there's several things. Now, obviously, whatever. There's so many things that I don't know here. I'm just going to make some assumptions. But yes, it is, right. It's non-traditional. They like that, right? So listen, they get enough consultants, they get enough bankers. They love them. They take them in, they pay the bills, they keep the lights on, they graduate, they donate back. They love all the high net worth potential people, right? Okay. Now, not saying that's not you, but what they like is they have that last 20% of the class, 25% of the class, or whatever it may be, that they're trying to round out with people who may work in slightly non-traditional industries or in roles like being a product manager for some type of publication, a major one. And what I would say is that that is an industry undergoing a lot of change. You probably have some good stories. It probably says a lot about you that you decided to maybe enter that. Maybe that's the only job you can get, right? Okay, we don't need that story. But let's say you decided to enter that industry because you love journalism. You've always been in like the literary society, wherever, and you ran it. You've always loved books. Mom and dad, taught you how to read books. Your grandmother was a great storyteller. Okay, all of that led to why you're high performing and why you are at a major journalism house, right? Because you have a passion for it, because you like it. Okay, yeah, you're smart and hardworking, but those are just what they expect you to have. You don't get credit for shit that people expect you to have, right? But there's a story here I can kind of tell, and you would go through and you'd basically say, this is the approach that I bring, even though this industry, people said, don't go there, Chris Morris. It's a dying animal, It's like it should be put out of its misery. It's all online, man. It's all blogs, don't you know? Um, uh, so so you said, no, I love it. This is where I want to go. I can make it work. I want to go work for somebody that's more innovative, that's still in business. So maybe you're working for a publishing house or journalism house that is actually quite innovative, right? And whatever that, or maybe they're old and you're bringing innovation as much as you can to it in the products and services that you're developing. So that right there, I made all of it up. I'm guessing, but if you can start saying things like that, that's the type of stuff Harvard and Stanford likes, right? Especially if you have even a higher purpose, not just you love lit, but let's face it, there's a lot of misinformation out there. It's important that there are responsible entities, outlets for pushing out the most objective viewpoints possible, facts, not fiction. And so as you paint the picture, for your goals, you could say, yeah, it's not just because I love it, not just because I'm good at it, but this is really important. And as we've seen in the last few years, incredibly important. Like just because the internet came doesn't mean, and everybody has a keyboard and internet access that they can be a journalist, that they can have good products that are relevant, that are truthful. And this is, I want to make, I want to develop products and services that take dying online uh, uh, publications that people have relied upon for a long time that are good and not sources of misinformation. And I want to bring them into the new age, is what they struggle because they're good at telling the truth. That doesn't mean they're good at building tech infrastructure or products that people respond well to, right? Okay, that's what I would say, Mr. Chris Morris. Oh my God, how many questions do you guys have? All right, so Ishan Bhatt can average undergraduate scores and a good job, let's say from a multinational corporation, along with a $750 GMAT score, get me a good scholarship and entry into Wharton. Yeah. Or does undergraduate performance? Oh, wait a second. You put the worst last. Or does undergraduate performance matter? Yes, undergraduate performance matters, right? It depends on how long you are working and how well you're doing at work. They care. Listen, they can put up with a lower than average undergraduate score, especially if it's a tough major at a tough university, right? You can write an optional essay saying it was a maturity issue, and if they see grade progression the last 2, 3, 4 years or 3 years at school, whatever. If you have an excuse like you had to work, parents were sick, first one in the family go to school, like all these things start to matter. You want to fill out the optional essay to explain that. And it can be as simple as I bit off more than I could chew, and I got way too involved. And once I learned to grow up and prioritize, whatever, things got better. Say all that. So undergraduate performance does matter, but what matters more is that you explain to them why that happened. And more importantly, if they give you the opportunity, what you learned about not screwing off, right? If that's what you were doing, how it changed you when you realized the stakes, you realized you had to grow up, you realized you had to be a man or a woman or whatever about it, right? And take things seriously. And they want to know where, like Harvard and Stanford give you that opportunity. Wharton, you could probably bake it into, um, it would be something like, see, you wouldn't want to bring this up in essay too much, but you could say, like, I want to tell you not what I did during my undergraduate, but how my undergraduate changed me. I went into it. I was a spoiled rich kid. I was a poor kid that didn't, have another pair of pants, just one, and a raggedy t-shirt, whatever it is. Like, you want to tell them the process of you going from someone who didn't know anything, right, to someone who was eventually getting good grades, right? Not enough to maybe lift the GPA as high as you would like it to be, but ended up being a leader, right? So does undergraduate performance matter? Yeah, and you need to explain if you have whatever going on and why. So anyway, because I've had people before have gone into Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, all top 7 business schools that have had just under a 3.0. Like, listen, I'm picking the outlier here, so don't be like, oh, I can go in, I can go anywhere. I have a 2.9 or whatever. I mean, if you went to an IIT, having like a 7 is pretty bad. I know, like in the 60 somethings can be first class distinction at whatever other schools. Kind of crazy, but in India, but whatever. Again, I'm assuming you're from India, maybe. Again, you could be from Las Vegas. All right, Emmanuel Mwaka says, would getting a rec from a team leader you've worked with several times as opposed to a direct boss hurt your chances? Okay, so is this I think this is an either or, but listen, you can get your direct boss. You need 2 recommendations. You can get your direct boss and you get somebody you worked with a few times, right? You want to explain why in an optional essay. Some schools will straight up ask you this, why you didn't get one from your direct supervisor. And of course, it is okay to say he's not supportive or she's not supportive. It would be penalized. People in finance say this all the time. If I tell them I'm leaving, I'm out the door, right? They don't muck around here. I'm gone, or I miss my bonus, but really I'm gone, right? So they're not supportive. It would neutralize my opportunities at work immediately or in the long term or whatever, right? I would be viewed as just kind of a short timer, and they'd put me in the corner with all the coats and hats, and that's it, right? Close the closet door. All right. So getting a rec from a team leader, yeah, I mean, I guess if they can keep their mouth shut a little bit and not tell everybody, right? But I think it would be fine to get from a team leader, not your direct boss, if you couldn't tell your direct boss, but you have to explain why you didn't get it from your direct boss. And your team leader went several times. I guess it's not necessarily the total quantity of time that you've worked with them, but it's how they tell the story of how impactful you were on their project, right? So yeah, you worked with them, but if they want to be able to say, like, Emmanuel is somebody who I've seen, like, I've worked with a lot of analysts, associates, whatever, young project managers, and I can count on one hand the last 20 years where I've seen someone as gifted as he is, not only with just making sure shit gets done, but dealing with people, problem children, and getting people to say yes, getting people to get over their roadblocks or hangups and whatever, reach agreement and march forward, holding hands, singing Kumbaya. Okay, so um, right, it's okay to get a team lead, but you got to explain it, right? Hopefully you'll get both. Okay, Rushil says, how does Wharton view candidates with respect to large family businesses, a few hundred million? Mr. Jane, come on in. They'll view it very well, right? They have a family business program, as do a lot of all top business schools, but trust me, they'll like it, right? They will like it a lot. And that's it. You'll be surprised. I would apply to Wharton, right? You will obviously have to have the GMAT scores and stuff like that, right? And you have to have business. Listen, you have to have goals that eventually align with the business. So you can say, later, I'm going to rejoin the company. Maybe you're working for the company now. I want to go to Wharton. And you can go right back into the family business. They'll probably love that because that's money in the bank. Like, they don't have to worry about you getting a job, right? But you have to show, like, you're going to be making moves. This isn't just going back and working for your dad or mom again, right? Or doing some fluff job. But yes, the answer is yes. Absolutely yes. Is University of Delhi a bigger brand than NIT, IITs in India with respect to? The answer is no. TechTuber asks, University of Delhi, bigger brand. So, okay. So NIT, IIT, So IIT by far is what top, India Institute of Technology for those who aren't from India. Yeah, it depends on the campus a bit, but they generally Bombay, Delhi, Kanpur, Kharagpur. I'm sure I'm missing one that's in there. Those are the ones I usually see getting in without much of a problem to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. University of Delhi does not have a problem at all getting into Wharton, right? So I just leave it at that. I have had people from University of Delhi get into Harvard, bits, even University of Pune, right? Get into Harvard. But Harvard likes what's going on at IIT for whatever reason, right? I mean, it's always like personal connections that they have to people who graduated from HBS and IIT, things like that. Certain industries where you see a lot of IITians, and finance, consulting, things like that, right? But I would not let the fact that you went to University of Delhi um, automatically exclude you from applying to Harvard. It should never exclude you from applying to Wharton, right? I'll tell you that right now. I've had several this year get in to Wharton. Not a problem, right? Just know that they tend to like if you went from University of Delhi to McKinsey, BCG, Bain, they love that. They'll eat it up. Or you went to whatever firm that's out there where it's um, listen, email me and I'll give you more of the lowdown. But you should apply. Okay, KN should hold events further. Okay, thanks, KN. So mysterious, KN. All right. So Rushil Jane, does working for Goldman Sachs, Blackstone, Toppy? Yeah, it helps. I mean, I don't even need to. You don't even need to tell me what it helped for. Yeah, it just helps. It helps everything. You scratch your knee if you work for Goldman, it heals faster, right? So what I would say is, it does help, right? Listen, it isn't the end all be all, right? It's not going to automatically guarantee you the Willy Wonka golden ticket, get you into the whatever chocolate factory, no problem. But if you can get into these firms, and it's very tough, that's telling Wharton, Harvard, Stanford something. I mean, Harvard and Wharton, something about, because it takes a lot of vetting to get into those firms, right? And so they automatically, now it doesn't mean you're going to get in. You still have to tell the story and articulate it and have good goals and things like that. But definitely, when they sort through the piles of resumes, those resumes are at the top, right? I mean, in the finance pile. But generally, like, think of all the lowest performing people that you've ever met in your life. I don't think they're working at Goldman and Blackstone unless they're related to somebody working at Goldman and Blackstone, or if their name is Goldman Sachs or Blackstone, right? All right. So, okay, Sean Bott says also can contribute to family business from management point. Okay, also can contribution to family business from management POV consider as valid work experience from management point of view along with permanent job at someone? Yes, it can. But remember, um, hang your hat on your current work experience and just say you're proud that you're able to help your mom and dad professionalize the infrastructure or set a strategic direction or whatever it is, because you're spending 5 hours a week there helping, right? Something that you never planned on doing, but it gives you great pride. And then just say eventually you're going to have to work for the company in senior position, and that this company has a lot of challenges, because it's old school family. We all know family owned businesses are sometimes not the most open to new ideas, sometimes, and you have a lot of challenges in the future with the cousins, the brothers, the uncles, the aunts, everybody that has their hand out for money, even though they may not do a lot of work or any work at all. And those are all the interpersonal dynamics and things you have to worry about in a family company, besides making shit on time and making it good and delivering it to customers, right? You have all these interpersonal dynamics. So that is why you need to develop your leadership skills along with your skills in ops or product management or whatever, right? So, and then you'll realize your eventual goals. Clifford, Mr. Clifford, thank you. I must study hard to get 7 for, yeah. So why are you on this presentation, Clifford? You need to get off and start opening up those GMAT books. Okay, Khalid says, is Wharton stingy on undergraduate GPAs, even if the applicants is mid 700s? No, they're not. This is actually a good question. I mean, they will forgive a lower GPA. Let's say it's hovering around 3 or low 3s. I mean, it depends. Like an art history 3.0, is definitely viewed worse than an engineering 3.0, something like that, right? No disrespect to art history majors, right? But where you can make up for it, if you get a monster, I apologize, there's some um, noise in the background, but is Wharton stingy on undergraduate GPA? Okay, no, GMAT scores will make up a lot, especially if you've been out more than 3 years from undergraduate. You get a 750, 760, whatever. They're like, you know what, man? Hey, all water under the bridge. Come on in, right? Now, hopefully it's not abysmal. If it is, you want to explain it, and that's all. So, schedule a free GMAT. Oh my God, look at all these comments. Abjay says, hi, yeah. Oh God, crying. Okay, GMAT Club, GMAT Club. Khalid says, my question has been answered. Thank you. Okay, cool. Vashali Argawal says, how good are my chances if I am a chartered accountant from India working Goldman Sachs? Okay. Well, the brand definitely helps you. Being a chartered accountant definitely helps you. Sounds very exciting, by the way. Congratulations. But I think like it all depends on your goals and your GMAT score. So you passed the bar for good work experience, right? You did. Goldman, whatever. I don't know where you went to undergrad, whatever, right? Whether it's an IIT, BITS, Delhi, NIT, but you passed the bar. Now they're going to want, like, you're good. Like right now, I'm just going to say with decent essays, right off the bat, you're good probably at Booth, Wharton. Okay, maybe see Columbia is tough because it's like, yeah, they're the finance school. I mean, anybody who was thinking about Columbia, by the way, is probably thinking about Wharton and Booth, maybe Kellogg, but apply your early decision, right? But don't apply too early decision, because then you're going to have to make a decision when they accept you at Columbia and you haven't even had your Wharton interview yet, right? So you just wasted your time and money applying to Columbia, right? You know, they're going to want you to shit or get off the pot, and the early decision deposit is $6,500. Anyway, okay, so Chris, thanks a lot, Paul, for the wonderful session. When can we have your next webinar? Oh, Chris, come on, man. It's coming up here soon. Like, check with GMAT Club. They'll know. I don't even know, right? Shame on me. But I know I have another one. I'll make it good. I'm gonna look for you. Better use the same screen name. Okay, Divya says, is mentioning career switch advisable as an international applicant? Oh, how can, did you show up to the beginning of this presentation? How can we not make it sound super ambitious but achievable and realistic for Wharton? Okay, see, that's like asking, how do we turn oil into water? All right, how can we make it sound super ambitious but achievable and realistic for Wharton? Okay, the long-term goal should be super ambitious. Listen, if something is super ambitious, don't use it as your short-term goal. I swear to you, reel back in. You can do whatever you want when you get to business school. Things change, right? But you have to be, the point of this whole exercise, of this whole presentation, is to get into Wharton, get into a business school, then do whatever you want, right? Find yourself. But do not be a career switcher. It depends on how you define career switcher. Engineering to consulting, that is an acceptable career switch, right? Consulting, if you're a consultant right now, or if you're at Goldman or whatever, if you're going from a hard job to get into what I would say maybe a more general type job, those are acceptable career switches, right? But if you're trying to go from being a product manager into investment banking, no. If you're saying PE or VC and you're not already in PE or VC, no, don't do that. I would even tell you, don't even apply, right? It's not realistic. You're just making it hard. Listen, it's important to tell the truth. It's important to be honest. But what that tells me, if your goals are too much of a zig or a zag, too ambitious, that tells me you haven't done your homework, so you don't even know what your goals are, right? No disrespect to you, right? You're asking the right questions. You're here viewing this presentation. You're doing the right moves, right? But you need to, like, once you start realizing, oh shit, I looked at LinkedIn, I looked at their employment reports from Wharton, and I see that nobody's ever made this jump. Why be the trailblazer? The trailblazers are never rewarded. They just get lit on fire and they whatever, and they go run off and whatever. Okay, so that's it. They're gonna love you, and they're going to, just think about this. They may love you. You may have awesome GMAT, undergrad, even work experience, and then all of a sudden you're telling them you want to go be a rodeo and a clown. They're like, oh God, you just ruined it, right? It's like a good-looking person. As soon as they start talking, like, oh my God, this person's so dumb. I'm kidding. All right, so. All right, so okay, so it's mentioned. Okay, Ishan, Mr. Man, you asked. I'm glad you asked a lot of questions. 3 years of work experience as developer with 750 score. Yeah, I mean, so it depends on the experience you have as a developer to get in there. Okay, NYU Stern is a pain in the ass. we'll try to keep this focused on Wharton, but NYU Stern is a pain in the ass to get into. They like the local kids. MIT is like that too. They like people from around the Northeast. They like people from around New York. Why? Because they always get burned by people coming from some part of the country or international that really want to go to Columbia, that are applying to NYU Stern, and they get into Columbia or not, but they just don't want to go to NYU Stern. So they used to ask a question like, who have you an essay, who have you spoken to here? How have you engaged our community? You want to make sure, if you want to go to Stern right now, you need to start dialing for dollars. I mean, you need to start pick up the phone, or seeing which one of your seniors from school has gone to NYU Stern, what was their experience, right? Start reaching out to the admissions committee, whatever online events that they have, all that stuff. Do that early. Should be doing that for every school. Harvard and Stanford, they know you want to go there. Wharton, you should start doing it, but Columbia, you should really start doing it. NYU, you must do that, right? You don't have a snowball's chance of staying packed in hell if you don't at least get in good with like current students. And you can say, oh, I know like Ricky Ticky, and I know Susie Smith, and I know Johnny Jones, right? President of this club and whatever. So do that now. 750 score, definitely. But you could even get in with a 720 to NYU Stern, as long as they know you want to go there. You're not just screwing around. Columbia, 750. Yeah, you would probably get some money maybe from Columbia and NYU, right? It's just, Ishan, I'm assuming you're a dude, right? Because all the Ishans I've ever known are dudes. If you had, I hate to use this term, but if you had a little more of a maybe diverse background, I hate to say that because I don't know you and I sound like a prick when I say that, but like usually, just email me, mba@amerasiaconsulting.com. All right, what is a good GRE score? Anywhere around like 328. Um, as you know, at 325 to 330, somewhere in that range. I do better on that than GMAT. Then take that. Definitely take that. Emmanuel, I'm telling you right now, take the GRE, screw the GMAT, whatever. I wouldn't say that to everybody. I'm saying that to you. And you will do fine. And the only thing with a GMAT, though, by the way, you want to consider is like, it is easier sometimes for them to give you money if you have a high GMAT. But if you can't get the high GMAT, then you're not going to get the money anyway. Take the GRE. Don't let it be an issue, right? Mr. Mohammed Farhad, will it be a strengthener to my application if I can plan to join my dad's manufacturing company after the MBA? I'm a mechanical engineer with 3.4 GPA and auto farm working for 2.5 years. Amtech Automotive. All right, so will it be a strengthener if I plan to join my dad's company? Depends on what you're going to do there, I guess. Depends on how big the company is. Man, what these people have all these family businesses? It's like my dad's just lucky to have a job. I was just realizing this. You guys have such wonderful lives. All right, you could, but you want to make sure. This is what I would say, right? If you're telling your story to somebody, Mr. Mo, I would say, it's always in my family. My dad wanted me to join the company. My mom, dad, parents wanted me to join the company. My brothers, sisters did. Everybody in my family joined the dad's company, right? But I resisted, right? If you have to tell the story, if I had to write your story, right, for a Hollywood movie, and win an Oscar, I would say, but I resisted that. I resisted that because even though it was like my birthright, I wanted to be my own man. I wanted to find my own way. I was just different in that way because of, I just wanted to strike out on my own and see if I could do it. And so I went to another automotive company. I went to another place. I've become a leader within that organization. I've got the youngest, coolest, best looking engineer of the, last 5 years award. Right. And I've made my mark on the company. Right. And, and had all these great experiences, right, in this large manufacturer. Now, after I graduate, what I've realized, is that after I graduate, um, I I can take what I've learned and professionalize or grow or whatever my dad's company, my family company. I've done what I needed to do to prove to myself that I'm not like daddy's little boy or whatever, or mommy's little boy. And I've built the confidence I need to push back on the people within the company, my dad's company, that are so used to doing things the same way, that are so used to viewing me as, little Mohammed and not big Mohammed, the ass kicking, good looking engineer type thing, right? And so I have the confidence to push back on the conventional wisdom that is rife or common within my family company, to deal with difficult situations that people have not, interpersonal situations that people haven't wanted to deal with for years, to make sure people feel like they have a stake and are working towards a common goal within the company, all these things. And so that is what I plan to do upon graduation. I'm going to get this like, mid-level manager role. I'm going to work it's important it's important to me, Mohammed, personally, that I work across all these different groups within the company, from accounting to custodian, janitorial, cleanup services, to everything, to accounting, marketing, product engineering, to whatever. I want to do all that, which is not something my cousins or my brothers or my sisters have done, but that I see the need to do, whatever. And then long term, I want to have the legitimacy, not because of my last name or because I'm the eldest or whatever, um, to properly assume the reins and use my parents' company or my dad's company as a tool, not just to make money for the family or keep people employed, but in a slightly different Mohammed flavor, which is, yes, a successful, well-run global business, right? On par with whatever other tier one or OEMs there may be, right? Suppliers. But also, I want to create a good place to work for men, women, people who would have been excluded from other whatever. I want to have a meritocracy, right? And yeah, yada yada yada. And I want to have a company that betters the circumstances of the communities in which they operate, which is something which is something that would make sense as important to you, because you're somebody who wants to go in and change the culture and make it more of a not a familyopoly, but a meritocracy, right? So that all makes sense. But you see how we get to that? Ohio State University. Oh my God. Oh, actually, the Ohio State University. Okay, so the Ohio State University. Yeah, I mean, listen, right there is another thing. So if your dad's I don't even know where the dad's manufacturing company is. Is it in Ohio, the heart of it all, the birthplace of aviation? Um, Anyway, so all right, so that's solid. If engineering something technical, whatever, yeah, mechanical engineering 3.4, yeah, you're doing well so far, man. Um, I thank your parents. All right, so Abijay says, how good are my chances of Wharton if I'm work at a top European top construction firm? Okay, all right, that's different. Not well known in the United States. Oh, try me. Um, with 3 years of international work experience. Is this one of these engineering firms from France? Is it? They're very good at running massive water projects. All right, starts with a V, maybe. Oh God, I can't remember the name. Anyway, so how good are my chances of Wharton? You're very good, very good. So Abijay, very, very good. Listen, it may not be well known in the United States because we all know how people from the United States are. I'm kidding. It may not good at the United be well known, but the people will know, right? So like a company like Schlumberger, right, is not well known in the United States. It's well known to people in the oil industry, but I guarantee you they will have heard of whatever engineering, especially if it's a big one around Europe, right? And so you're going to be fine right there. You probably got some pretty good, solid work experience. I think it's different enough to differentiate you in a very positive way, right? Um, Running all these projects, yada yada yada, right? Um, it's going to be interesting to see what your goals are. Sean Lee says, if you're currently working at a hedge fund investor who came from Lazard, yeah, Lazard, tough place to work, huh? Only the strong survive. What are my chances? Are there many hedge fund applicants? Okay, so at Wharton, it is very good, very solid. Wharton, Booth, Columbia, of course, very good. Yeah, I mean, you should have no fear. Like, listen, get in the low 700s to the mid 700s. You're fine, Mr. Lee. At coming from a hedge fund, yeah, maybe it's a new one. It's just what is See, you got to spin the story. If it's a healthcare hedge fund, whatever they focus on, um, they're going to want to know just kind of whether for Stanford, Harvard, Wharton, wherever. But for Wharton, you're definitely sitting very pretty. You would have to like write something dumb or whatever to not get in. Um, Whatever. I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying it here, but you're right what they're looking for. Have no fear. Now, yeah, especially they know what's up at Lazard, right? They know that if you don't die there on the floor, that you pretty much were drinking from the fire hose and got a full experience. Are there many hedge fund applicants? No, they're not. I see more PEVC. Hedge fund, they're not, but not a problem, right? Not at all. You just got to make sure you keep your goals conservative, um, and you'll be fine at Wharton. Remember, at Wharton, folks, you don't really have to have that. I'm going to save every whale, baby, and well in some devastated part of the world, right? Mr. Kalia says, I have done chartered accountancy in first attempts. Does CFA level 2 Okay, okay, so you're talking about, okay, CFA level 2, but did not finish level 3. No, it's not something incomplete. If you have level 1, you're still doing better than the vast majority of people applying to business school. Traditionally, in business schools where people start studying for the CFA and then they complete it by the time they're done, hopefully in 18 months. Is it no? I've said don't spend your time studying for level 3 anymore. Don't do that. Spend it studying for the GMAT if you haven't taken the GMAT yet. Don't do it because the GMAT, by far and away, when they start looking at stats, that is what separates men from boys, girls from women, groupies from rock stars. All right. Is that seen as something? Okay, I have 7 years of experience. Okay, PwC, across investment banking at PwC and last 3 years in fintech startup founded human. Yeah, dude, you have good experience. Listen, don't study for that freaking CFA. Nail the GMAT, right? Somebody like you would probably be a good candidate for Stanford and Harvard, right? Obviously, there's undergraduate pedigree in what you did, and they need to see leadership. But the fintech startup thing, as soon as I start seeing things like that, I start seeing the Harvard and Stanford bells going off. Wharton, of course, but I think you may even run into a problem where Wharton may not actually think that you're serious about applying to them when you throw your application into the pile and you're not serious about applying to them. Haha. Okay. Next question. I'm already an MBA from India. Okay, so yeah, I've run into this before. Some schools, you have to check each school's website. Some will allow you to apply with an MBA from India, or that other degree that's kind of similar to an MBA that people get without any work experience after undergrad in India. Just review each school's websites. I wish there was a list, but there's not of schools that I could find that will accept that. But it's not automatically a disqualification because it's a vastly different experience, right? And you have to make that case though in your essays why you need MBA Part 2. And it all comes down to it is a vastly different experience. You were a different person now and then. You may have not known, like there, it's maybe less pragmatic. Less people will have work experience, and now you know what you know, and now you know why you need an MBA. Okay. MBA. Somebody's Abhijay's laughing again. Dude, are you high? Hilti Group. So Hilti's from Sweden, right? They make good tools. Really good tools, just expensive. Let's see. Vishali says, I am currently an accounting profile Goldman. Will that be a drawback if I want to be a finance role? No, it won't. You have the basics. This is not too much of a transition. I've seen people do it successfully at like top 5 business schools, but at Wharton, yeah, this is a realistic transition, right? You just want to make sure you know everything about the what Wharton can teach you or show you where you'll make this transition. Because remember, like if you're an accounting profile at Goldman, I mean, do you really want to go back with an MBA into accounting? No. Nobody would ever really do that, I think. So you want to go be finance. So where are the accounting people going into a bulge bracket bank, investment bank? Where are they going? Where do they end up? Check LinkedIn, right? See if you can Google around on the Wharton website or any other website to see if you can read up on the profile of people who have made that transition. Guys, I swear I wish I could answer more questions. And right now I see that there aren't any more questions. So maybe it would be now a good time to get the hell out of here. 2.5 hours. What's going on? I didn't sign up for this. Anyway, ladies and germs, I gotta go. If you could see me right now, it's like 100 degrees in this room. But hey, by the way, don't leave the session without a like. But email me. So hopefully up on the screen still is this email address. Just reference the today's session. Just say Paul is awesome session. No, just Wharton, how to get into Wharton session, and then ask me your question, and I'll try to follow up as quickly as possible. But I have a feeling Abhijay and Mohammed may have a few questions coming my way. So as soon as I get through theirs over email, I'll get to yours. No, I'm kidding. Just email me, and I'll go over and give you the honest to God answer, right? And if you're looking for a consultant, as always, we can talk about that. But I just hope that I was able to teach you guys something today, and you didn't walk away hearing the same old shit that you may have seen in other presentations. Anyway, be safe out there. I heard there's a disease roaming around. And I'll talk to you folks later. There will be another presentation shortly in the future.